I first will record attendance and verify a quorum. So Esther Hugo is present, Brock Grisell is present, Daryl Morgan is present, and I'm present. So Liz, we can verify a quorum. We are waiting on Ms. Navarro, who will be coming, and Chad Eatinger, who will be dialing in by 11:30, well ahead of any action items. Board member Jessica Wind is unable to attend today. So welcome to guests and staff. As we usually do, I'd like any staff, we usually have a representative from each division of each of the divisions attend the board meetings so that they can report out at staff meetings. So if you are one of those staff people from MWA or MWAS who does not usually attend every board meeting, if you could stand up and introduce yourselves, that would be great. All right, let's start down here.
Hi, my name is Atiris Adams, and I am the College and Career Counseling Coordinator for MWA.
Great, nice to meet you.
Hello, my name is Mr. Pascal. I do the middle school sports and 6th grade health and wellness.
Great, nice to see you.
Kelly Lay, I do the GATE program as well as 6th grade lead and history.
Great.
Mark Garavito, I'm assistant to the registrar.
Mary McKenna, upper school science teacher and AP psychologist.
Great. Okay.
Hi, I'm Khadijah Brown, 4th year 5th grade teacher, president of the School Site Council, and I'm here today because I'm Teacher of the Month for the middle school.
Oh, yay, congratulations.
Hi, I'm Celeste Weezar, and I'm the 9th grade writing and tech teacher, and I'm also the Teacher of the Month for the upper school.
Is that the new plan that the Teachers of the Month come to be that? I love that plan. That's great.
Do they get special parking spaces?
Yes. Oh, they do? Oh, that's excellent.
That is the best thing.
Okay, yeah, everybody's smiling quite a bit about that.
Right in front.
Okay, we will now move to public comments.
There's 2 more in the back.
Oh, sorry. Are there 2 more in the back? I didn't see anybody else standing up. I'm sorry. 3 more. Okay. Please.
Oh, sorry. Lamario Sill, student recruiter for Making Waves Academy.
Cindy Bartman, office administrator in the upper school. Eva Yava, parent guardian engagement coordinator.
Great. Welcome. So listen well so that you can report back to your colleagues.
Mi nombre es Berta Magaña y tengo un hijo en 6º grado.
Her name is Berta Magana and she has a 6th grade student.
And welcome back. Okay. All right. So we're going to move to the public comment section now. All public comments for the board meeting will happen up front by the category upon which you want to speak. So general comments will be first, and then we'll go to people who want to comment on certain sections of the agenda. Each person will have 2 minutes. If you need translation, you'll have 4 minutes. And just to remind folks that you're free to comment on any of the items here or not on the agenda. In general, we mostly listen, and we can't engage in discussion with you during the public comment period, but we might make a clarification or a statement of fact if that is a simple thing to clarify. In general, if there are outstanding questions, we would have you talk to Ms. Martinez and can follow up with you after the board meeting. Any other points we want to make about that? Okay, all right. So you will be called one by one.
Yes. Speaker 1, Yolanda Lopez, making a general public comment. You want to step up to the podium? Ms. Garay, she'll require translation.
Buenos días. Mi comentario es acerca de cómo apoyan a los niños que
van avanzados y están aburridos, que es el caso de mi hijo.
Miss Yolanda's comment is, how do you guys support students who have fallen in the crack of being bored and not having the desire to learn anymore?
Y ahora ya no le importa si le ponen buenas o malas calificaciones y eso me preocupa. Y habla con él y es lo mismo.
He's very careless about if he gets a bad or good grade. Miss Yolanda has tried speaking to her son about it and he pays no attention to her.
Y le he preguntado a otras mamás y están en el mismo caso que el mío y ya los niños ya no quieren ir a la escuela porque están aburridos.
She has asked other mothers if they're going through the same thing, and some of these mothers have shared the same concern that their children are bored and don't want to come to school to learn anymore.
Y también si nos pueden dar clases de cómo utilizar Google Plus a los padres y Remind.
And if there's a way that the parents can be educated on how to use Google Classroom and the Remind apps.
Gracias.
That's it.
Can I just ask one clarifying question? How old is your son? How old is your son? ¿Cuántos años tiene mi
Well,
So
it's
sixth
grade.
grade? Yes, okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Petrolina Fernandez, and she's making a general public comment. And she will also require translation. All of our speakers today will require.
Good morning, everyone. Buenos días a todos. Mi nombre es Petronila Fernández y estoy aquí en hacer un comentario público para darle la bienvenida a todo el personal, público presente y decir que felizmente mi niño ha sido aceptado a esta escuela.
Her name is Petronila Fernandez, and she's here once to thank and welcome everyone present, parents, staff, and others here, and just to share with you guys that her child made it in the lottery, and he's now part of Making Waves Salad.
Congratulations.
Una de las cosas por las que estoy hoy presente acá es porque el board es muy importante para mí, donde yo quiero dejarles saber que soy una madre muy activa, me gusta envolverme mucho en la educación de mis hijos y espero colaborar y que trabajemos mutuamente para el mejor progreso académico de nuestros hijos.
Ms. Fernandez is a very involved parent in her child's life and education, and she's here to present herself to you guys, the board of directors, to let you know that she's here to help and serve in any way possible.
Y una de las razones, como ve, hablo español, soy bilingüe, felizmente mis niños también pues son bilingües también, pero me gustaría sugerirles que en el futuro puedan tener la consideración de tener las traducciones, las agendas en español y agradecer a mis Garay por tener esta facilidad. Es muchísimo agradable poder contar con ese apoyo.
Ms. Fernandez will also like to reiterate that she is bilingual. Her children are also bilingual, which in a way facilitates for her to understand, but she would like to encourage for the agendas and all scripts to where public is invited to be also translated, and will also like to thank me for being available to facilitate a translation for the parents.
Estoy aquí para apoyar, para ayudar. Va a ser mi primera experiencia. Vengo de una escuela del distrito y espero tener buenos resultados y también colaborar con todos ustedes. Muchas gracias.
She is here to help serve, and she's coming from a West Contra Costa County school, but ready to engage in our community and ready to serve.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The final speaker we have is Berta Magaña, and she is making a general public comment.
Buenos días. Mi nombre es Berta Magaña. Mi hijo está en 6º grado Este es su primer año en Making Ways. Mi hijo está en educación especial. Mi hijo está muy contento aquí. Quiero agradecer al equipo de educación especial. Me gustaría que mejoraran los servicios de educación especial para que mi hijo sea más exitoso. Por favor, trabajemos juntos para que mi hijo tenga una educación de calidad. Y esto es mi deseo para todos los niños de educación especial. Muchas gracias.
Her name is Berta Magaña, and her student is a 6th grade student. Her son is very happy here at the academy. He receives special education services. She would like to see maybe some more support in that department to make it better, not only to serve her student, but to serve others. She would like for her son to be a student that excels, not only in the special ed category, but just like other students. But she would like to see maybe a little bit more help in that department. Yet again, thank everyone who works in that department, especially.
Thank you.
These are all the speaker charts we have.
Okay. So, we have been starting every board meeting talking about ways in which we're going to have to adjust to successfully grow. And sort of adding to that theme today, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the changing charter school laws and possibly landscape. So I'm sure that most board members are familiar with the fact that Gavin Newsom signed to sort of memorialize the Attorney General ruling on the need for charter schools to comply with the Brown Act and other conflict of interest code statutes. We had already been adhering to most of that in any case, and so it is, it's a good change for the state as a whole to ensure that there's transparency and adherence to process for charter schools that is consistent. So on that theme, Liz and Alton and I and our Director of Compliance, Vanessa Kagoy, did a Brown Act boot camp a couple weeks ago until 9:30 at night, so you can thank us for going through that. It's quite interesting. We'll be sharing out some slides on that at another meeting, and in rotation, would like every board member to participate in a webinar or a boot camp offered by our attorney or other various resources. It just kind of keeps us sharp on all of the things we need to be knowledgeable about, and we will be tightening processes and procedures in order to make sure that we're in complete compliance. The other thing that the law has made clear is that by January 2020 we need to have a different structure that characterizes our relationship with the foundation, who supports so much of the work we do, indeed makes it possible by building the buildings, by paying for a variety of things related to college access for our students, and teacher satisfaction and retention. And so the sole statutory member structure that we currently have between our organizations will need to be changed. And we are in the process of working with our attorneys on the school side and the foundation's attorneys on their side to let that structure go and create a different kind of arrangement that still allows us to, allows them to build schools for us to use and allows them to support us in the various important ways that they support us. And I think it's important to acknowledge, and this is some of the noise in the larger charter school landscape around CMOs, is that we do not have a CMO. We have a sole statutory member structure, and the only reason that the foundation exists is to support the school and to support our graduates and other students of need when they're in college. And that's its only mission. And it's been doing that for quite a long time. So everybody's confident on all sides that there is a framework we can set up that will allow the foundation to continue to do that work and allow us to continue to benefit from it. So more on that, but we should be prepared to have new bylaws by the June meeting so that we can enter the next fiscal year with a different structure. Any questions about that?
Whose responsibility is it to construct the bylaws?
Our attorneys and the foundation's attorneys.
Oh, good.
Right? So they will be looking at the bylaws we have and figuring that out. Yeah, when you were thinking I was going to sign it to you.
I know, I was like,
I know.
not a good time to leave the room.
No, I wouldn't have voluntold you for something like that. Okay. Any other questions about that?
Will there be a change in the board structure or?
So one of the differences, that's a good question. One of the differences will be is that currently, according to our sole statutory member structure, the foundation board appoints us. In the future, we will be self-appointing, which is how most charter school boards are. They're self-appointing. And so that is a change that will shift once we have those new bylaws. There will be other changes. Right now, it's the foundation evaluates the CEO with the input of this board. That will be a piece that changes. So there will be various things that change to that structure. We already have complete control over the budgets. That's already been in our purview. Many of the things that these changes in the law demand, we already have, but there will be a couple things that will change. Any other questions about that piece? Okay. Potential new board members. So as we know, Eric Abrams had to resign in the middle of his term because it became too hard to commute from his place of work in Palo Alto to here during the middle of the day. And we have found an excellent replacement to fill out his term. We're going to be bringing that candidate to the foundation board at next week's meeting because under our current structure, they still appoint the person. And this person is well known to many of us, Margaret Watson. Esther, I don't know if you remember her. So she is a former TFA teacher and she taught in a middle school in Oakland where actually our middle school dean used to teach. And they almost overlapped. They were just 1 year apart, Mr. Ortega. And then she went to Bain where she focused on a lot of work consulting for schools and educational institutions at Bain. And she was the sort of assistant to the facilitator of the first board retreat, and she was the complete facilitator on her own with support from other younger people of our second board retreat. So she's really familiar with making waves. She spearheaded under the pro bono division of Bain Inspire some of the really key initiatives they did for us, one of which was the original staff survey. And so she worked at Bain. She did an externship for 6 months at Khan Academy working on their educational products. Then she went to Harvard Business School, and now she's back doing strategic organizational strategy for Adobe. So she has these education shops, but she's also really good at growth and strategic thinking for organizations. And she right away called and said she was back and wanted to re-engage. And so she met with Jess. Jess was unfortunately unable to be here today, and Jess was very excited about the expertise she would bring. Daryl, you talked to her. Do you want to share your thoughts?
I don't really have anything to add above and beyond that. I think her background is really well set to join us. I'll say this as one of the senior people on the board, age-wise. It'll be great to have someone sort of from her lens and her station in life, because she's younger and closer to the work and the population. And I think that'll be really great.
Yeah, she and Jess are going to hold down that millennial wing, right? So, yeah,
that was a great conversation.
Yeah, good. Okay, so that'll be happening, and then as folks on the board know, we've been trying to build the board a little bit to have not just more people, but a broader variety of perspectives of people, and really wanted to look to find Latino professionals to join the board. And we had a great meeting with a candidate, Leila Naranjo. Is that her last name right?
Lila
Naranjo on Tuesday, I believe, and she's a colleague of, former colleague of Liz's at UC Berkeley, first generation college student herself, and has been doing all kinds of work in the college access space at UC Berkeley, and she's quite interested in joining, so we're going to be sending her through the normal steps, which is to talk to 2 other board members. I don't know, Esther, I'd like you to talk to her, but I don't know, meeting in person, that might be a little more difficult. But in any case, I'll be reaching out to several of you. Daryl, it might make sense for you again, because she lives in Oakland and you're in El Cerrito, or Brock, you know, but we'll figure it out. She's in San Leandro and you're in...
It's not so bad, yeah.
It's not so bad. So, so we'll figure that out and go through those steps and see how that looks. But that's, we're very excited to have a candidate, another candidate to consider here. And then last, as everyone always knows, we talk about, and I say it every time because we have new folks here, if you know people in Pittsburgh who are interested in education, we are looking for people to join the board who live or work in Pittsburgh. So the board is open to any suggestions anybody has at any point about folks we could engage with out there. Any questions about that? All right, next, I'm kind of going up and down with the different messaging here. The next, there are some, just in full transparency, there are some troubling for charter schools proposals on the table in the legislature right now that might impact, and if passed, would certainly impact charter schools in a lot of ways. And there's a lot that you can read online, particularly on EdSource, about this. And just wanted to let the board know that we're watching this very carefully. And Alton and I are making sure to stay abreast of what's happening and having conversations as necessary with various people who are knowledgeable to make sure that we are, aware of what's going on so that we can best protect our school and move forward in the successful way we have for all of these years. So if you have any questions after reading more about the things online, I don't bother to go into it because every week it's a different thing and it's very quickly evolving. Important to know that the governor has formed under State Superintendent Tony Thurmond, who is known to making waves and has visited and has actually had really nice things to say about us in the past, has formed a Blue Ribbon Committee to study the situation. And the committee, I was happy to see earlier this week, is pretty evenly balanced between people in the charter school world, such as Margaret Fortune, who started Fortune Schools, and there's somebody from Green Dot, right, and somebody from Aspire, and somebody from the Charter School Association who is involved in special education. And then there are people from the California Teachers Union, and there's, I think, a superintendent from San Diego Unified. So it does seem to be a committee that brings together stakeholders from all different parts of the education landscape in California, and they're expected to report back to the governor by July in order to understand the best ways to move the situation forward. As board members may know, various large unified school districts in the last 6 months have passed resolutions calling for a charter school moratorium in the state of California. And so this move by the governor and by the these moves by the legislature are in response to LA Unified, among others, calling for a moratorium on charter schools. And so the charter school community is looking at ways to make sure that the public understands its position. And this is where it's really important for teachers at charter schools, but also parents at charter schools, to make their voices heard and to tell their stories about how schools are serving their students. And if their students are being differently served in charter schools than they had been in the schools where they were, it's important that these stories are out there and heard. So that's all evolving, and we'll be continuing to talk about that as a community. Any questions about that? All right, last, just want to get sort of a poll of board members on our meeting schedule for next year. So we're meeting 7 times a year at the moment for 3 hours. And sometimes we're running long, and sometimes we, the planning team, meaning Elton, the school leaders, Liz and myself, are finding when we're planning out the meetings that we don't have time to cover all of the topics we want to cover. So I see that we have 2 choices. One is to add a half an hour to each meeting, and maybe we'll finish early. And we can add half hour by 10:45 to 2:15 if people commit to being on time. Maybe that feels like a painless way to add half an hour. We can add a half an hour at the beginning or the end. So that's one choice, adding half an hour. The other choice is resequencing all the meetings and having 8 instead of 7, but within the same September to June calendar, because we don't want to meet in July and August when school is closed. So ponder that for a second. And
Vote on that today?
What?
Are we voting on that?
We're not voting, but
Okay.
I would like to have your input on it. I'm not sure it's I mean, we're going to have to figure out one or the other.
Yeah.
So any kind of input you have at this point, and then given that input, we'll come up with a proposed schedule that we would bring to the next meeting. So any thoughts about that? Because you
I
traveled
like
the
the
farthest.
10:45 to 2:15 model
10:45 to 2:15, so adding half an hour.
instead of adding another meeting.
Instead of
We all
adding
have-
another meeting.
We all have committee assignments as well, so,
Yes.
you know, in addition to that, we have other meetings
Yep.
that we attend.
Yeah, also, I guess supportive of adding half an hour.
Adding half an hour.
Yep.
Instead of another meeting.
Yes.
Daryl?
Agree.
Okay, did I hear, Chad, is that you on the phone now?
Yes, I'm here. I would concur with what everyone else has said. Is I think the extra half hour and moving it to starting a little bit earlier, I think is perfect.
Okay. Oh, so you would like 10:30 to 2 rather than 10:45 to 2:15. Is that what you're saying?
Either way, fine.
Either way. Okay.
I would prefer that personally.
10:30?
Yeah, 10:30 to 2, rather than starting early and ending at 2, rather than, I guess extending, it's just the traffic gets, it's worse for me, but
It gets
I will
worse.
certainly,
It does.
just be
Okay.
okay.
All right, well, that's good to hear, and then we'll offline get, for Maricela, she's so close, I think for her, she's going to be flexible, but I'll touch base with Jess about it as well. Okay, great. I think that's it. Anything else you want to add in this section? Okay. All right, so now we're moving to the standing reports. And the first thing we're going to do is have our reading group and discuss our board book, How Children Succeed. I think that we have some good discussion questions for this that were sent ahead. So I'll just open it up. I mean, what sort of things surprised you, if anything, from this book? Why might they have surprised you?
School.
Yeah, go ahead. Back to school. Okay, we have to call on somebody now. Okay, I'll start.
I
Go ahead. You start.
One of the things that impressed me was to learn about the importance of cultural capital. Because sometimes you think, if we can just get the students here in the building and we can influence them, we can change things, but there's so much more that has to happen in their backgrounds and their home life that really supplement and support them towards success. So the importance of that throughout, I mean, there's so many examples of why that's really important. So that was something. I thought a good example of cultural capital was reading the KIP. They have that book that they give all of their students. It's kind of like their roadmap to college. I thought that was a really good example of trying to supplement cultural capital by giving people something else. Their playbook, they called it, that was mentioned. So I'm not saying that we should have a book or anything like that, but it surprised me that it was so important. Because I think you think that the school can take care of everything,
Right.
but the reality is it's got to be the community.
Right.
So that impressed me.
Yep.
For me, I think, in the first half of the book, I found myself feeling sort of disappointed because there was just so much evidence that said if parents are not doing their job at all, it's just so difficult for a child to have the kind of social emotional preparation that they need to succeed. And I was very discouraged by that in the beginning part of the book because, you know, if you spend your life in education, you want to feel like you really can make an impact. And then you think of how many teachers say, well, we can't fix everything, right? And then that's sort of really true. But then, so I guess that surprised me because I hadn't expected the book to be about that. I never read the back of a book before I start it because I just like to experience it without knowing what, I don't know, it's just how I am. So that surprised me that there was so much focus on that. But then, as you went through some of the different scenarios where they showed how, even without that, various different individual teachers or various different programs or various different interventions were able to help a child get where they needed to be, then I felt more encouraged. Other thoughts on that?
There were a couple of things for me. One, not being a chess player, I was a little surprised at how deep that journey was into chess. And there were times where I wondered, how are they going to bring us back
to that? Yeah.
So, and at the end of the day, it made sense to me, but there were times during that where I was wondering, okay, where is this going and how is this going to connect back? The other thing that was a little bit surprising and somewhat confirming is how similar some of the topics, the suggestions, the examples, the problems, and the victories and solutions were to what I've experienced in the business world. So it's almost like this cycle that starts very early, and this is not earth-shattering or earth-breaking news by any stretch of the imagination. I guess I was just surprised at reading through, hearing about some of the examples, seeing the cycle, and then thinking about things that I'm working on right now with people, with teams, with leaders, with our organization, that even down to the word flow, that whole section about flow, we talk about that all the time. So it was confirming, affirming, surprising a little bit, to sort of see that circle and know that no matter when you start, you're always on that journey.
Oh, that's a really interesting observation.
I was positively surprised to see that there are possibilities to, I guess, intervene, to certain people's, lives or styles or how they do things even at a later age. I mean, that was actually surprising. I don't read, in these topics too much, so maybe it's also like a known fact, but it was kind of surprising to me that some of the examples, especially in the later part of the high school,
right.
How they were able to kind of change the kids or affect them or kind of like, I guess, bring some maybe good leadership or, I don't know, give them some maybe good guidance that kind of changes their lives, considerably. So that actually was, surprising. And in the level of, detail, of the various search, not that, I guess all of them are described in the book, but I was actually surprised to see, how much work actually has gone into, that kind of, I guess, surveys and comparisons between different groups and things like that.
Yeah. Other thoughts? Do you have any other thoughts?
I was impressed with the example they gave about the growth mindset class that closed the gap for female math students.
Yeah.
How just that whole attitudinal shift
Yeah.
and the inspiration that you can, or the motivation you can give students can change that so dramatically. So I thought that was, and I know we talk about growth mindset in their meetings all the time, so I was like, wow, that's impressive.
So another one of the questions asked, if we agree with the premise on that non-cognitive skills are as important as cognitive skills, especially in our demographic. Anybody who doesn't, it would seem as a board we've supported the Preparing the Mind for Success in Competition program, so fully, but is there anybody who didn't agree with that after reading this? I mean, if you don't agree, I'm not going to say if you don't agree you're wrong, but it seems really pretty clear that that was really important. But was it even more important? I guess my sub-question to this would be, did it seem even more important than you had thought before after reading all of this?
Yes.
Yeah,
if the research is, I guess true, I guess there's no reason why it shouldn't. I mean, certainly this is probably way more important, than I thought. Like even with my own kids, like focus on the grades and this and that, but there's kind of a lot going on.
Yeah, I did keep thinking about that with my own kids. I was like, well, did I shield them too much, or did I make sure that they,
Were you looking and grooming them enough?
Yes. Well, or was I doing that too much? I was thinking about what a tough love perspective the chess teacher had. Like, what a stupid move you made. Like, if you hadn't made that stupid move then, you would have won the match. This very bold truth told in sort of a very naked way, but then immediately back to, you're a great player, and so, like, if you don't make that mistake again, you're going to be fine. It reminded me of a middle school vice principal that my kids had, who would always say, the choice you make today is not the choice you need to make tomorrow. Because you made this terrible choice today, it's a terrible choice, and here's what you're going to be doing because you made that terrible choice today. Tomorrow, we're all good. Maybe you're going to start new, and so that piece, I don't know, how do you guys see that playing out as school leaders? Sometimes those are tough conversations to have with kids, right?
Yeah, I think what came up for me is to the point of the non-cognitive skills. Every year we meet with faculty and we talk about the academics course and how we're going to support our wave makers to be successful in that realm. But we are just as focused on the non-cognitive skills, because what we noticed is even organically, whenever we're interfacing with students and families throughout the year, it comes up. Right? It's part of who you are, what your character is, and I love that the book talks about grit, and resilience, and our wave makers are so different, but these skills are so necessary for them being successful. So it just made me reappreciate that we do focus on that every year, and have been thinking through the last few years how we can make sure that that is evident in our classrooms and it's part of the planning. So it just reinforced, like, okay, that's right, this August and going back into next year, we have to make sure like we have this down and we're talking about it just as much as we're talking about the academics.
Yeah, because, one of the other things I kept talking about were time management and executive functioning skills.
Yes.
Yeah. And we kind of assume that students are going to have those skills, but we don't really show them how to get from A to B intentionally.
Right, and that's been coming up.
We expect them to have that.
Right, and that's been coming up even recently, because we've been preparing for our Saturday Academy. We've been talking about students that need support, and faculty have been saying, like, note-taking, time management, like, they need to work on that as much as they need to work on 1 + 2 = 3, right? And so,
What's I'm spacing out now the name of that program, that's the college prep program for middle school, Avid. Okay, in Avid, the first thing they do to the middle school students in Avid is hand them a planner and a binder organized with tabs by subject and force them to use it. Organize your life, because it's teaching these executive function skills.
which is what we do in 9th grade, and I know the middle school does it, so it's a great segue into their transition to the upper school. Like, these skills are still very much important for you to be successful.
So Chad, I want to make space for you to speak. So is there anything you want to add at this point?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm kind of disagreeing with everyone else at this point, but yeah, really, I think just really harping on the importance of kind of the non-cognitive skills, I think is really important, and just reminds me a lot, and I'm glad that the author references too, is I think the references to grit, similar to the book by Angela Duckworth, just talking about how not just the academic opportunities, but also some of the non-academic and extracurricular activities, and really kind of pushing to similar to choice, you can make choices, you can explore new things, really actually finding a way to kind of stick with some of these opportunities, making that commitment and following through with it, and just kind of the impact that has in other areas of the person's life as they go on, and so I think that kind of, really just kind of making sure that in addition to a lot of kind of the social and emotional support that we're providing for the kids, is also really kind of pushing and making sure that we're providing these other sorts of opportunities that they can learn these lessons that they're really not going to learn in a classroom setting, sports, other types of extracurriculars, teamwork, stuff like that. I think it really has impact elsewhere. And so I think we do a really good job of that, but just kind of making sure that that's always front and center.
No, I think that's a really good point that I hadn't necessarily thought too much about while reading it, but it is one of the arguments for why we're so committed to having a sports program here. A lot of charter schools don't have a sports program, but it's because of exactly what you're saying. Yeah. Angel, were you going to say something?
I was just going to add on, we were talking about preparation, Avid, and my lens on what Tuff is writing, especially the work that he does and what he writes around the allostatic load and how important that is to recognize. It's not, when we think non-cognitively, it's not just about the competence skills that students are learning in order to be resilient and get through what they need to get through to be successful, but it's also the stress management. And so it's not really how much stress, we can't manage how much stress people have, but we can manage their ability to know how to manage their stress. Right. Yeah. So connecting to a person or to a system that helps build those skills so that you can show up and actually endure what's necessary to learn the skills to help you be resilient through what you need to accomplish. So it's taking kind of a meta-cognitive look at non-cognitive skills from the allostatic load or overload perspective.
Right. Yeah, that kind of segues well to the next question about, we've always taken this into account, but does reading it make us think there's anything else we should be doing, knowing that a lot of children in our community are facing the kind of traumas that they that are described with a number of students in the book. And one of the things I was thinking about is to your licking and grooming piece, right? I don't talk about it. They do. They talked about that a lot. He talked about everything a lot. Like if he brought it up there, he talked about it a lot. He didn't do anything shallowly. It made me think that do we have enough opportunities for a particular child to be mentored by a particular adult over multiple years? For example, I don't know that we have. And we have Marlin Hour now. We don't have the standard advisory anymore. I don't think we have advisory in the middle school. It made me think about that if you have an advisory class, which sometimes used to be called homeroom, where you have that teacher with the same set of kids in the class for your entire trajectory through middle school or high school, there is an opportunity for somebody else to become that kind of mentor or person that's providing this support. Because it showed with the rat mother that wasn't actually the mother. Like it didn't matter which adult rat helped the child with the pup when it came back into the den or whatever. So I just wonder, should we be thinking more purposefully about that in order to ensure that all adults might be helping with to think about this, but could we create greater opportunities for a particular adult to attach to a particular subset of kids?
I think that's something to explore. I thought beyond the licking and the grooming, they talked about the chess lady with the red velvet hair. He has a lot of strange descriptors.
I know, it's true.
They're memorable.
Yeah,
you remember them, right?
Yeah. Maybe you want a cupcake. Marshmallow. It talks about how middle school students in particular, when someone takes you seriously, the unexpected experience of someone taking them seriously, believing in their abilities and challenging them to improve themselves. So maybe that needs to be like something that we do and really focus on in middle school. Not that it doesn't, carry on through for older students, but I thought that was really pivotal in terms of what we could do more. And I noticed in some of the comments in response to the LCAP that people were asking for an after-school club.
Yeah.
So maybe that's a place where those kinds of things can happen in the after-school club. I think it was the parent feedback on the LCAP.
I think another interesting element to bring into this is this whole scandal right now of celebrity parents, wealthy parents paying for their kids to get to college, and how in those cases they've robbed their students of developing a healthy, non-cognitive set of skills around failure, trying really hard and failing, or trying really hard and getting in on their own merit, right? For me, when I think about our kids and the work that CCC is doing, I think our students and sometimes our parents parents and sometimes our teachers have tapes in their head that think that unless a student shows up in a particular way cognitively, they don't deserve to be in college. And what this underlines is there's a lot of kids going to college who may not be deserving,
Right.
but there's another back door for them to get in, and no one knows.
Right.
But if you're a person of color, the assumption is maybe you don't belong there. And I think that's what this whole college scandal sort of underlines for me, is that we never think about that for celebrity kids.
But now we do, and that, to me, that's the benefit of this whole thing, right? Because now everybody's going to say, well, when we're asking the question who belongs here, we're not just asking it about these type of kids, right? And there's a benefit to that for our kids. All right, what about some of these other questions? Other areas of research you might be curious, and do you or do you not agree with this statement around high school GPA being a better predictor than the SAT or a like test?
I advocate for that one strongly. I advocated for this question being here. Because again,
Which one, number 5?
Number 5, yeah. Because again, I think that some of our staff who have gone to different schools, maybe in a suburban setting or went to a better school, they see the Charles Murray sort of take on intelligence, which is this sort of fixed. There are some people who are smart, some people aren't. We have to have these measures and bars that sort of delineate rigor and all that stuff. So our model is completely not that. And so then, really emphasizing the importance of grades and the grade book and how they do in terms of effort with whatever surroundings they're in, that is determining grit, right? If you can get A's no matter where you are, that says something about you, and it says something about the predictability of how hard you'll work when you get into a college environment, right?
Well, and it's also to that point that he made very early on with the data about people who got a GED as opposed to doing high school, right?
Yeah.
Because and it was, he said something like, I don't know if I underlined it here. It is the ability to actually slog through things that are boring and uninteresting and still do it because you're working toward a goal. That is the thing that predicts, are you going to make it through college?
Right. Which is why
not
we celebrate.
What you know,
which is why we celebrate any of our students who graduate later.
Right.
And get their diploma versus quitting and getting a GED, because we want to emphasize, hey, this is a milestone, significant, even before you get to college.
Yeah, what that said to me, and I'm way oversimplifying, is it's the value of the journey versus an event. That's what the GPA is, a journey, SAT is an event.
Yeah. Well, it speaks to your earlier comment about how then people are going to show up in the workplace as adults.
Right.
Yes.
And how it's going to show up there, and how then it's going to impact each of us as adults, and how we help contribute to fulfilling our mission here or elsewhere as grown-ups.
Yeah.
Can you say more about that? What do you mean by that?
Just that if you don't have those skills earlier on, you're not going to have them as an adult, right? And this is all practice, and for me, iteration.
Right.
To getting there.
And the consequences when you're an adult are very different.
Ratchet up.
I mean, they're relative to where you are at your stage in life.
Right.
But as an adult, the consequences of not getting a paycheck because you can't do your job, because you're not demonstrating the communication or the initiative or the ownership,
time management,
all of those things.
executive function.
Right. You mentioned the quote on page 152, but on 153 it says, high school grades are more than mastery of content. They're motivation, perseverance, good study habits, time management skills, and the ability to figure out your context and what's going on. And I think that's really important. Plus, anyone who has ever sat through one of my curriculum presentations know that I always talk about the power and intensity of the high school curriculum is the single most important predictor of success in college. So it's true. And then also, College Board, as an organization, all their admission directors do an annual survey, and good grades in college prep courses by far over test scores. The National Association for College Admission Counseling does the same survey every year. I mean, there's a lot of data on that. That's what they look at the most. It's the transcript. So the reality is that every transcript tells a story.
Well, and it's also, to this point about affluent kids, it's much harder to game a transcript than to game the SAT, right?
Right.
Even if you're not cheating, even if you're not actually cheating on it like some of these people were by sending in a person to take it for their child, what that message is to your child, I have no idea. Like, I think you're too dumb to take this well, so I'm going to send it to somebody else for you.
Yes.
I mean, the damage of that has got to be pretty significant. But even just gaming it by having just an excessive amount of tutoring and practice, like the GPA cannot be gamed, right? I mean, it's because it's this journey and all these classes and all these, right?
Yes.
Okay, any other comments or observations that are sort of outliers from what we've discussed? Otherwise, I think this is a great, this is Alton who suggested this book. We partly chose it because Paul Tuff is going to be the keynote speaker at the first annual College Success Institute that CAP is putting on together with the foundation, and so we thought it was timely, but also so relevant to our work. But any other?
Just add in closing, maybe as you all were thinking, I was thinking about talking. I was thinking about the discussion. I said to you the other day that it's not until now in my life that I look at my struggle as a privilege, and I didn't see it that way when I was younger. I saw it as like this unclimbable mountain, like I'm always just going to be struggling, and it's not until now that I'm doing work with students who are in some of the same circumstances that I can call my own struggle of privilege and say to them, here are the things that I've learned through that, right? And so I think to your earlier question about what can we do that's immediate, I think any adult on this campus who's experienced any kind of struggle that has tested their resilience or their ability to see long term, there's something you learn there that you can help a student see that in their own struggle, and to say to them, the foresight you don't have now, someday you'll have, right? But what can you learn through this situation that you're going through now, and turn it into skill development for them? Because I know for myself, and for a lot of people who are first-gen college students, they're not learning that until they get to college. And that's true because there are programs like Summer Bridge, like Avid wouldn't exist if there wasn't a need for it. And so the more we can do that and the earlier we can do that with our kids, to the point about middle school, the better we're setting them up to I told the students, so that you land on a campus, not crash on a campus. Right? And so I would just encourage everyone, like, if you've struggled, if you know something was really tough and you learned something from that, like, spread that love and send it to another kid and tell them, like, someday it's going to be better. So I would just add that.
I think that's a really good message, and it goes to this that you've all been talking about, which is showing up with your authentic selves as staff working with kids. Yeah. Okay. Great. I'll report back at what the foundation discussion of the book was like compared to ours, right? Because see if anybody has any different sort of ideas. Okay, we are now going to move to the Q&A on the director's reports. And we'll start with middle school. Just want to say, again, this month, this new What Now format is really helpful and great. So thanks to Liz for setting up that template. All right, who wants to begin on the middle school director's report? And Chad, just shout out at any point if you have questions. I'll try to continue to create openings for you, but tap something or make some noise if I don't do it in a timely manner.
Oh yeah, sure. I'll yell out them.
Okay. All right, Esther, do you want to start?
Sure. I wanted to commend everyone for the African American Black dinner and turnout. That seemed to be really impactful, and I think that's so important to recognize that group of students in that way. Kudos on the history competition as well.
Yeah. That was just
that is really impressive.
Yeah.
And then I was wondering, do the students who were recognized, are they promoted around the school, or?
Yeah, the day that they came back, they wore their T-shirts and their medals, and they will be celebrated.
Okay, and you call their names out so everybody knows.
We will celebrate them.
Roll out the red carpet. I just wanted to make sure those students were being recognized, because that's really impressive.
We also celebrated the teachers.
Good. Oh yeah, that's important.
I think next year it would be great for the board to have that date well ahead of time so that a number of us could attend. 'Cause I was really sorry I couldn't attend, but I think we just have to know it ahead of time.
To our school?
Oh, sorry, to the Versailles dinner.
Oh, to the beside dinner?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
And to the history thing too.
And to the history thing too, right?
I like the way that you're emphasizing the leadership of our faculty through the Bright Spot Symposium. I thought that was really noteworthy. And I was really excited about the GATE program. And we're going to hear more about that later.
Yes, I'm curriculum review committee.
Because I had a question about what does it mean to have a soft launch of a GATE parent advisory? I don't know what that means. It's like a Hollywood term.
It's our a pilot to start. Pilot? Yeah, pilot. Soft launch pilot.
Versus hard launch.
We'll call those synonyms.
I know. I just wondered what that
What, pilot and soft launch?
Soft, yeah,
I understand
synonyms.
pilot.
Synonyms,
Yeah,
pilot
I'm
and
trying
soft
it out.
launch.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Those are just, I just had those don't really know.
Okay, anybody else on the middle school? So I had so on the Bright Spot Symposium, each faculty member had the opportunity to attend 3. Was that by their own choice, the 3 they chose?
Yes.
Or were they, okay. So that just sounds like such a beneficial thing. So I would love to hear, there's a little blurb here about the ANET partnership. And it references that because of this, we're seeing a stronger connection to standards and on pace to meet goals. I would love to have one example from any class or any teacher of a pivot that was made when they looked at the ANET data. And maybe that is, is that Ms. Shelburne back there? Yes. I don't know, maybe you're able to give that now, or maybe you can send it to us, but I would just like to have one anecdote. Here's what the teacher saw, and so here's what they changed in response to that, because we talk about that is what ANET is allowing us to do, and so I would just like to have some data points, some examples.
That's great.
So would you rather just write it to us, Ms. Shelburne?
I could, or I could speak to it now, and we also have some teachers here, which maybe we can put on the spot, but
Oh, the teacher of the month?
for example, I was meeting with
Podium,
oh,
so we can hear you.
I was meeting with Mr. Wright, one of our 5th grade humanities teachers, just yesterday, and he was sharing that after our last PD, which is, if you think about the teaching and learning cycle, it was on the planning section, and he said that after that PD, he went back to his classroom, looked at the text that he was using for his upcoming unit, and said, you know what, I'm noticing that this text is not completely aligned to the complexity level of 5th grade after unpacking the ANET. So the 5th grade team got together and they looked for some texts that kind of met the complexity levels that they had discussed in PD. And the whole center of that focus was around planning questions that really delve and build understanding of the text. And so after that session, the team had gotten together and kind of worked to kind of realign what they were working on to meet that grade level expectation.
Great, that's a great example. That's exactly the kind
And
of
the
example.
curriculum review committee will be sharing more updates on it as well.
Great, okay, thank you. And wait, while you're still standing there, since you're the one who wrote this report, one more question. At the end, you talk about how the students are achieving 3 to 5% better on the assessments this year compared to last year. Did that meet your target? Or is that, had you hoped for more than that, or is that a lot in your mind?
When we look at ANET, it's actually, material growth is between 2 to 7%.
Okay.
And so when we see around 3 to 4%, we are looking every year to meet 5% growth. So we're taking our next ANET on Monday, and we look forward to seeing the comparison between this A3 and last A3 in order to look at the full year's picture, and there'll be updates on that as well in our curriculum committee.
Okay, great. All right, thank you so
Thank you.
much. And then on the GATE program, I had a couple questions. Are the selection protocols the same as they were in the original program we had before we repiloted it?
Yes. Ms. Lee, would you like to speak to that, the selection protocol?
I just didn't know if we had changed it significantly from the protocols we went through initially, or whether you've maintained that.
We maintained it.
You maintained it, okay. Okay, because that was really comprehensive and good. And then, did not understand the first chart. Perhaps we can pull it up on the screen. I didn't understand, it said, so it's student population meeting gate criteria. And then, I know it's really small, what the letters are there. Sorry,
one of the
okay.
board members showed it. So the first chart basically tells you how many students are classified in GATE for the last 4 years, and technically 5 years. Because the first year, the 10th grader, that was done before I came into as GATE coordinator, and I did not have the data on students who were very close to classifying. I only knew that there was.
So is that what the red are? The red are students who are on the bubble?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay, all right, got it. And then, you know, to your challenge about it, the challenge that is listed here is that they're conducted during DTI and academic support to accommodate 8th grade schedules. I didn't really understand why that was a disadvantage, because I thought differentiated tier instruction was, GATE was one of those. So when would you rather be teaching it rather than that? And why is that a challenge? I didn't understand.
Okay. We are offering algebra in the 8th grade, a class that we don't necessarily offer in other grades. And because of the DTI has to take place during that period, we cannot take away from algebra, because if I pull the student out of algebra, they will not get the credit moving forward. So I have to hold the class during academic support.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's a challenge because the class is just so short.
And any thought that it would just convert to an after-school class?
It will be a challenge. I didn't mention it necessarily in this report, but our GATE students are high achievers, so they have so many different things that they are juggling. I'm actually losing some students during academic support because they would be on the basketball team, for example, so they have to leave early for games. We're constantly struggling to find a good balance. One of the conversations that we have, Ms. Shelburne and I, were thinking just for the 8th grader is to propose GATE as an on-call class, and to take the place of the half semester for art, for example. That would fit, right? But we have to come up with.
That's not ideal either.
Yeah, I know. We have to come up with. Just scheduling is an issue.
The scheduling proposal is a part of our curriculum review committee presentation.
Okay.
That's what we'll delve into today.
All right, great. Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Lane. Thank you for putting so much energy into this program. It's really important, and we're really happy to see it off the ground again. And we're really thankful for the work you're doing. So thank you very much. Okay, upper school. So, thank you for being honest in the challenges that you're facing, and I think it's a very good example of what we talked about very early in the year around having courageous and difficult conversations. So, just wanted to call that out in this space, and then I think some of those issues are going to be talked about further later in the meeting when we talk about the staff survey. But do we have questions or other questions? And would anybody else like to go first besides Esther or me? Questions on the upper school director's report?
I do have a question on the AP test. Similar to the SAT, do we provide any help on the AP exams? I mean, I saw the AP exam grades. I think they might be kind of in line with the averages. I don't know, but I kind of found that getting some help just for the exam, similar to the SAT, just to give them some tactics.
Practice tests, yeah.
Considerably increases the results, because I think it's maybe a little bit on the test itself rather than the knowledge.
Yeah, sure. And we have Ms. Adams here, and she can speak to how she supports the teachers. But what I know about how our AP teachers support our students in the classes, the practice exams are definitely happening. They've actually even asked for this Saturday for all the AP teachers opted in to doing a mock exam because they also acknowledge how important that is in terms of endurance as well as content. We've also this year incorporated the AP Marlin Hour, so that's 3 hours a week where there was our AP teachers doing AP practice and also going through content that otherwise maybe wasn't covered during the AP class. And are there any other structures that you can think of that I didn't mention?
Yes, so time for us has been a really important issue in terms of helping drive up some of the scores on our AP exams. One of the things that we noticed in terms of our Saturday Academy programming for our juniors was that that was the venue through which we offered mock SAT exams, and we learned that those exams for the SAT was taking away time from students to prep on the AP exams. So what we did this year was we intentionally offered SAT mock exams on Saturdays that were not Saturday academies, just to free up time for students to prepare.
Because of the students that wanted to participate in the SAT mock exam, but also had AP courses. And also we ran into, in years past, where we have students taking multiple AP courses, and so they'd have to choose on a Saturday academy, and we don't want them to have to do that. So we're trying to work through how do we incorporate time during the school day or on the Saturday academy programming.
What's the earliest grade that the kids take the AP? Is it like
Like the first exam?
Like the grade.
10th grade.
Okay.
10th grade, they can take AP Psych. And then we have some different offerings next year. We've talked about pre-AP courses, maybe offering pre-AP to 9th graders. We're just trying to build that into our budget, build that into our 3-year plan with AP courses, but it's something that we're definitely considering. And then Mr. Scottno?
Yes, and we in our review of the PSAT scores from last fall, there's a really fantastic measure there called AP Potential, which helps us identify students who may score 3 or higher on these AP exams. We were very excited to see that there were a number of 8th graders who were demonstrating AP potential for AP Computer Science Principles. We're hoping to offer this course next year. We do have student interest, and we're hoping that the budget for the next year's academic year can support that course.
So we're trying to incorporate the strategy behind the scenes so that we're leveraging that data for our students and then asking our faculty which classes they'd like to teach, but looking at the potential data and saying, we already know you would do really well or you're on the bubble, and so we're trying to leverage that data in terms of how we are deciding which classes we offer as well.
Okay.
So we need more time though.
I'm going to offer something else, which is we had decided as a school when we first started offering APs that they'd be available and accessible for all students, particularly the students who've been doing well, but even ones who weren't. If they petitioned to take the class, even the class experience was worth it, whether or not they passed the test or not. So we continue to hold that philosophy. There's a tension, though, I think, in the few teachers who we have who are willing to teach an AP class. Some of them have expressed at different times historically that they find it challenging to teach a class where it feels like it's open to everybody. They would rather teach the class of kids who seem more motivated, or however they would define it. And so we have this tension of trying to do the spirit of what the College Board suggests, which is just offer to everybody. The curriculum itself is great. Just teach great curriculum that's there, but with some tension of people wanting us to screen for the kids, and we don't want to do that. We think it should be accessible for everybody. We want to see an improvement of those scores, but that's not our goal necessarily. For the kids that score well and get the college credit, exceptional. But even for the ones who don't, it's still a good exposure.
Yeah, I guess I would say that I feel like there's kind of a middle line, and maybe this is what we're doing, and I might be misunderstanding, but I think it should be open to everyone who wants to take it.
Yes.
I don't think we should be putting kids in, assigning them there.
Yes,
Because
agreed.
then you have the
Agreed.
situation where the teacher has kids who are not motivated to do it.
Agreed.
Even if the student looks like their grades show they shouldn't be there, if they want to do it, this is the motivation piece that's like this, right?
We agree, yeah.
Okay, so
And it
that's
should be a
what's
petition.
happening. It's just
in the
people.
past, you had to petition. I don't know if you still have to do that, but you would have to petition if you didn't have the grades to get the advisor and the teacher to say, hey,
Right.
this student says he wants to do it.
He needs it,
I would
right.
support them, yes.
But we're not assigning anybody who didn't ask for it.
There were some students that were placed in AP courses this year. John, maybe you can speak to that. And
Yes,
that's become troublesome.
I can speak to it. So we have some upper division students who were placed in AP courses even though they had not requested it. What happened is we entered into a situation in which they had already taken easier elective courses earlier on in their high school career, and there were no other available elective options available to them without retaking an elective course they already took. Now, for next year's course offering, we are opening some of the doors in some of these elective courses to try to prevent against situations like that.
Okay. And then my comment just on this is, I think because my own children went to extremely diverse schools, I'm never too happy to only see averages. So I want to understand what these averages are really showing, right? Because 90 and 10 averages to 50, and so does 50 and 50. And so in one case, it says something about the data subset, and in the other, it doesn't. And so I'd like to see, in addition to the average scores that you showed for AP scores in history, math, and social science, I'd like to see the data plot of what the actual scores were. So can you send those? Right, because if we have some zeros or ones, and then we have fours, then that tells one thing about a 1.6 average. But if everybody's getting around 1 or 2, then that says something else, right?
Mrs. Siap, I had requested that from Mr. Siapno earlier this winter, and he provided that, so he already has that, so he can.
Great, I think that would be helpful. And in the future then, when we show averages, let's also show that, just to make sure that we understand what's actually going on.
Because we do have students scoring over a 3, so we want to capture that.
Well, it's that, but it's also, we need to understand
where they are.
What does the average mean? Yeah, exactly, right. And we do want to see, gosh, was there anybody who actually got some credits when they went to CSU? Yeah, that would be good.
I had a couple of points about AP since we're...
Go ahead, please.
I just wanted to say that going from 12% to 41% is a huge increase. That's not easy to do. Well done. I love everything in the now what section, I have to say.
Of this report?
Of the report.
Yep.
They're going to expand it to all of these different courses. I think that's fantastic. Even offer some online options, which is the wave of the future. They're eliminating Honors English 3. Remember we had a long conversation about that in the curriculum, going to AP English language?
Yes, really happy about that.
That was that meeting that you kept cycling back to, and I'm like, oh my gosh, she's going to talk about it again. Here we go. That was good, though. That was good. See, it's happening.
Yes. Are you saying I was like a dog with a bone about it? Yeah.
We received the message. I'm on LNG, licking and grooming.
Yeah.
Okay, increasing AP scores, the full-length mock AP exams. The teachers have to come in to do that on Saturday?
We have Saturday academies designated that.
Do they get paid for that?
Yes.
Extra?
It's part of their.
Really? Okay. And then I think it's great that you're doing the training. I had one more question, maybe 2. In areas where there are more test takers than enrollment, which exams are students taking? What are the overlaps?
Yes. So for the years in which there were more test takers than enrollment, I'm looking at 16, 17. So in that year, we offered the AP English Language and Composition exam, but not the course. And we had about 30 students opt to take that exam.
And this year we're doing AP Spanish.
I was just going to ask the course.
Okay.
Good, because we should be encouraging that, because we actually have some high levels.
Right.
Ms. Adams, do you want to speak to the process about students opting into exams that we currently don't have courses for, but we want to make sure students want to take the examination?
Sure, yes. We sent out basically a message to families saying that any students that were not enrolled in AP courses could come to my office to advocate for themselves to take an AP exam. And we do have a large number, about 71 students right now who want to take the AP Spanish exam, although we don't currently offer AP Spanish.
Good. Excellent. And for students who are taking more than one test, what are the subject areas that they usually do routinely?
It's usually AP US History, so English, AP Psychology, and like AP Biology or Statistics.
Okay. Thank you. Just curious about that.
And then I would say in the future, or it would be good to have 2 soundbite, 2 sentences maybe, helping the board remember what the difference between UC and CSU eligibility is. Right? Or maybe it's a chart, and what is the test score range, and what is your GPA range, right? Just to remind folks of the difference between the 2, because we have talked a lot about pushing the UC eligibility higher as well. I mean, excellent job that 71% are CSU eligible. I mean, that's phenomenal. And I'm not meaning at all to undercut the significance of that, because that's a huge achievement. but it would be good to understand what the difference is and where the push points are.
Is this percentage or this is numbers, right?
This is, that chart you're referring to is total number of students, and depending on what our denominator is for this year, it's actually closer to 85%.
Oh, so it's raw student numbers, it's not percentages.
Headcount,
Oh, okay, that's
yes.
great. Okay.
That's great.
That's even better. Yeah.
It's wonderful.
That's great. That's great.
Totally aligned with our mission.
Any questions on the athletics report?
I just wanted to note the great team GPAs.
Yes. I know.
Those are really high for athletes.
Yeah, they're really good.
Okay, I shouldn't say that. That kid didn't come out.
No, that didn't come out. Exactly right.
That didn't come out there. I was pleasantly surprised by that.
For having competing
That's why they said
priorities.
Competing
interests.
Yes, scholar athletes.
Okay, Chad, do you have any questions on the upper school report?
No. Thank you.
Okay, now we're moving to the next item, which is,
Wait,
sorry.
one more question.
Sorry, go ahead.
College Readiness Summit?
Yes. Miss Adams.
Okay, somebody talk to me about
Yes,
that.
I was actually hoping someone would ask about that, Miss Adams.
Okay, yes, so what we did was Ms. Carr actually led us and she actually asked for us to, myself and Ms. Oladev, our data and assessment coordinator, to basically present to all the upper school leadership about CSU eligibility, about UC eligibility, and about what these scores mean, what the SAT means for in terms of eligibility, what the grades, how it all factors in.
Right.
And we really dug deeper into the PSAT score results.
That's what I was going to
Yes, so we looked at grade 8 through 11, what the PSAT score results were, and then we also looked at grade 12. The SAT school day, we offered that for the first time this year. So we really dug deeper into the scores, and then we also looked at, for the seniors, we looked at their SAT scores, like who was meeting benchmarks versus the CAS testing, and who was meeting the benchmark, and what was the overlap, so we can kind of start comparing to see which, how the exams align or not align. So,
And the hope is to take that to faculty, but with the recent staff satisfaction survey results, we're wanting to be responsive as a leadership team to the survey, and so that's taking up some of our CLB time, but our hope is to somehow find a way to get that data to faculty before they leave for the summer, in hopes that that could impact the way in which they plan over the summer for their courses.
Great. My follow-up was, what are the action items that came out of that? Like you're waiting on that.
the biggest thing is that the leaders felt like the faculty needed to hear this,
Yes.
and that all the teachers needed to understand, and the middle school as well.
That was my
It's just that all the teachers, since they are the ones working with students very closely, and sometimes advising students, especially like in advisory, that they really have a good understanding of what these different terms mean.
Good.
And doing this again when the SBAC results are released, and we have the PSAT in the fall, taking the data and maybe doing this earlier on in the year, so the faculty also have that data as they're making real-time decisions with their year to glance.
Do you have any other comments? Go ahead.
Just one quick question. To complete that circle, I know it's not appropriate to share everything, but do we share results back with students sort of as a whole to say we're making these leaps in this area, in this subject? I don't know whether you're obviously not going to share individual statistics, but to be able to talk about where we're making progress and where we still want to get better, just to keep them in the conversation and to give them some, that would be motivating to me to hear that we're getting better all the time.
Yes, we've done it very intentionally with our seniors, since they'll be taking the real exam on May 4th. And then our younger grades, we actually have it scheduled in advisory on Tuesday of next week to roll out to the 9th and 10th graders as well.
And then the middle school has an initiative around dynamic data, and we're very much, as an upper school leadership team, interested in being in alignment with the middle school, so that as an academy, we'll be looking and addressing data very similar next year.
I would just say, I'd ask for a more robust internal marketing campaign to show different things like that. So I would say, if you think about moving to a new space, just think really critically and get a lot of ideas about how to really make data dynamic in your area, because there's so much great stuff coming out of your office. And if I'm a 9th grader, I want to start seeing where I need to be tracking towards if I see this data.
Yep.
Can I just add in terms of giving student feedback and being responsive to student feedback to what Daryl said, we do, and to Ms. Carr's point, we institute a student survey semesterly in the middle school that enhances that instruction, assessment in every area of the student academic experience. There's a meeting that happens with the children to share that out, to get their feedback, and then the teachers take that data and create bullet points to help refine their approach, and leadership does the same. So the students know that we're taking their feedback and we're being responsive to them, and we report back out to the students.
That's cool. Okay. Q&A on the CEO report.
Okay, what impressed me about the CEO report was that you're dealing with big ideas and systems. And I think about, reflect on where we were a couple of years ago, where you were really in the weeds on a lot of things. So it tells me that we've got strong leadership that you trust to carry out what they need to do. So I was just like, wow, this is a true CEO report. Looks great. I have no questions. Thank you.
My only question is how many total students were in the 5th grade lottery? Mario, do you know that?
405.
405? 405? Is that like the most we've ever had for 5th grade?
Yes.
I believe so.
Wow, because I always thought we had been in the 300s, right? Wow, okay. And do we have any sense yet from your work of what the sort of breakdowns are ethnically and racially and by gender of that 5th grade class?
So the students that I got offered, there were 121 Hispanic, I think 20 to 20, it was either 20, I think 23 African American, if I'm not mistaken, like 7 Asian. That's the best, I don't remember the other one, that's the best of my recollection of who was offered. Yeah.
As of Monday, we had over 100 acceptances already.
Wow.
So as of
Yeah, we have
Monday, yeah, what's the day?
122, I would say.
Okay, great. Thank you, and thank you for all your hard work on that.
Yes.
We were 1 week out. We did the lottery last week. We announced the results on Friday afternoon at 5 o'clock. So since then.
All right, any other questions or comments? Chad, on the CEO report? Okay, next is any questions on the finance report? Okay, I just want to say that Mr. Mai, I think you are doing an excellent job on your narrative, and it makes it really comprehensible to us, and that's why people have so few questions. I would say what I would like to see for the board as a reminder in each of the reports is just what is the total annual, for the year that we're in, for the fiscal year we're in, what is the total budget for MWA and what is the total budget for MWAS? And if we just have that as a constant reminder so that people are really conversant and fluent in those overall numbers. Off the top of your head, can you say isn't it 12 point something million for the school, and are you?
How much the school is?
Yeah, do you know it off the top of your head?
Yeah, so it's a school, the total budget is about $19 million.
But that's the both together.
Just the one.
But that's just for the school.
Correct.
For this fiscal year.
Correct.
Is 19.
Correct.
Okay,
Around.
and then how much is MWAS for this year?
We originally budgeted about $6 million.
Okay. All right, so that's good. Let's just have that on each of the summary pages. That would be great. And then it seems like we have still struggled with unfilled positions, and that every year when we're looking, or every cycle, every month, every meeting that we have, that we see we are under budget, it's largely attributable to the fact that we have unfilled positions.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what kind of thoughts we have about that, and is it just sort of ongoing challenges?
This is ongoing Bay Area. This is
Yep.
just a really tough labor market. It's a tight labor market. And if we don't have some certain positions filled at the beginning of the year, it's not likely we can fill them in the year. I think
Right.
Ms. Johnson's team has done a good job of bringing people in the middle of the year, so we have probably less vacancies by percentage than we probably ever have.
Right.
But because we're growing and we have more numbers, then there's still numbers of people that are, there's still open positions.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that unlike hiring in the private sector, there is just this calendar, and if you don't get somebody by the beginning of the year, you don't get them until the next year.
Well, and even outside of this industry and in other industries, they all have their own individual cycles. Hit the same way, so that if you don't catch somebody during the right business cycle for that staff function, you won't have them.
You won't have
because
them.
people won't leave when
Yep.
they're approaching a month or a year end close or
Whatever. Yep. Yep.
So that's not surprising.
So one of the things I would say, and I see you here, Lisa, one of the things that the foundation has been talking about is what are the ways that we can, how can we market ourselves best in order to recruit who we need? And I think that's the same sort of discussions I'm sure you're having here. But if there's any way the board can support on that, or if you want to have a strategy session with the board on that issue of how we might be able to make ourselves more appealing, the board is always willing to listen to a variety of strategies on that. And that just goes to marketing us, differentiating us from other charter schools and other education nonprofits and other types of places where people who we know might be going.
So we're doing the thing on the website where we're trying to add some more, interactive stuff on the website. But the other thing that makes us unique is we're not just hiring for skills, we're hiring for mission alignment and fit.
Right.
So it adds another layer and bar entry in terms of coming in to work for us.
Yep. All right, any other questions? Go ahead, Chad, please.
Yeah, this is Chad here. On that note, do we work with any sort of external recruiting firms in terms of trying to hire up, and is there any way that we can kind of amp that up, especially knowing how big of an impact for the rest of the year not being able to fill the seats at the very beginning of the year?
Yes. Yeah, we typically use search firms for more senior leader positions. We've used some agencies, temp agencies, that some of the people end up coming on and being permanent, and they've offered to provide employees for us. It typically just comes down to fit. So we'll have our own searches, we'll have services, we'll have temp agencies, but even throughout all those different mechanisms, we're still looking for fit. Because we found that, I'll just underline this again, I may have said it previously, we found that when we just try to fill the position and they're not the right fit, it causes so much other disturbance that it's just not worth having the position be filled if they're not, if it's not filled by the right person.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Would you like to comment at all, since you're here, on any of this? Yeah, would you like to comment? Yeah. Yes.
No. Just about the tough, hard to fill positions. Do you have any comments about that?
No comment.
You're working very hard. You're working hard to fill them. Yes, you are. Okay. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. Sorry. I just thought if you wanted to say something, I wanted to make sure to give you the opportunity. Okay. So no questions on the finance piece for now. So Ms. Navarro is not here to give the school site council report, so I'd like to ask Ms. Brown, the school site council chair, to, are you the chair or the president? Yes. President, okay. Would you mind giving it, since Ms. Navarro isn't here, just give us a few sentences about the last school site council meeting and what all is going on and how people are feeling about the LCAP and anything else you'd like to share?
Last week we had a school site council meeting, which is our custom every month. But in this school site council meeting in particular, we invited all of the stakeholders from Making Waves Academy. So that includes parents, faculty and staff, and also students and administrators to come to the school site council meeting and focus on our LCAP priority goals. During this meeting, we looked at our 8 priority goals and where Making Waves is and current work with those priority goals. So we broke into smaller groups, and this presentation was facilitated by Ms. Kaiwa, who's the Director of Compliance. So we broke into smaller groups, and in those groups, we looked at each priority goal. We looked at where we are here at Making Waves in terms of those priority goals. So if we're in progress or if they are complete, and we self-assessed to see how we were doing with those priority goals. It was really phenomenal to have all of the stakeholders in that space participate in that process, as we are the ones who are helping to make these decisions and pushing these agendas forward. So Ms. Kaigwe led a phenomenal presentation. We had a great amount of stakeholders out. And now our LCAP and our SIPs are combining into one. So we look forward to doing this process again next year.
Okay, thank you so much, and thank you for your leadership on this. Okay, I think we have a report out from Jess's work on diversity and inclusion that you're going to give, Elton, or is it just?
Yeah, I can share. So Jess and Eric, who's a former board member, have been working with me on this around trying to frame what the diversity and inclusion work should be here at Makeways Academy, with the thought being it should come from the board and it should be integrated to everything we do. So starting here with this group, wanting to come back with some ideas of a statement and some things we discussed. So the diversity and inclusion committee, there's some bullets that were sent out to you all that just says, in our discussion that we had, here are the things that we think a diversity and inclusion sort of sentiment should have here at Makeways Academy, which is an environment where people can be their best selves, okay for people to make observations but not judgments, important to know where we come from to better be able to connect with one another, acknowledging our differences and different observations of one another without impacting others in a negative way, diversity and inclusion as an invitation for people to do the things they're most excited and passionate about, and bringing a sense of joy and discovery into the community with this work versus compliance. And so the last bullet I'll just highlight, that Eric really highlighted for me too, is that typically when I've seen diversity and inclusion work happen in schools or in organizations, it's seen as such a fraught discussion where everyone's feeling like I've got to really now be super sensitive to what I'm saying. And so what he talked about is, let's create an environment where people can make mistakes. It's okay that we learn from it and we learn from each other. There's trust that we build and we just keep it moving because we know that the community is going to have difference and that's okay. We wanted that to be an acceptable part of our community. So I thought that was a really good spirit. If we can do this work within that spirit, it could be super impactful for everybody involved. And then we drafted an initial diversity and inclusion statement. So the idea is that you all look at the statement, see if you have any feedback. Do you want any other work to happen from this group? Next step will be coming back with some ideas of next things we can do, but starting to anchor it with the board's response to this initial draft of a statement. I can read it out loud for people to get it. So MWA, through our commitment to create a safe and welcoming culture and environment of diversity and inclusion, seeks to be an environment where people can be their best selves, are able to connect with one another, acknowledge our differences without negatively impacting others, and bring a sense of joy and discovery into the community through this work.
I think this is terrific. I think we could wordsmith it if we need to, but to get started and as a place to launch from, I think it's terrific. And I especially appreciate the lightness that's represented in that last bullet and then the last part of this, because you're right. With the best of intentions, they always feel heavy. And this doesn't.
Yeah.
Who does?
Yeah, and there should be joy in talking about different things, right? Like I agree. I agree with everything that you're all said. I think we might want to consider saying community closer up to the front, like this second mention of environment. I might say community there because community is one of our core values. And bringing that really way up front, like right here. Right here. As that, as community, maybe makes sense, but otherwise I think it's great and you guys are off to a really good start. Yeah. Yeah, it is hard to do. So well done. Any other thoughts about that? So I do want to back up 1 minute because I realized that these materials about the stakeholder feedback comments that Ms. Brown just talked about are actually in the packet. I thought that was for a different section and not for this. So I just want to make sure we have a chance to ask any questions about these materials here. I mean, my overarching question, and maybe you can answer, Ms. Brown, because I don't think Ms. Kagway is here, is so that the bullet points in the charts that are the sort of comments, were those individual parent comments, or were those a synthesis of the group's
Have you seen that?
thoughts?
I'll answer that.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So Ms. Brown is not seeing this document, this is a document for the board.
Oh, okay.
It's to cap, my understanding is that Ms. Kagway did a activity with all of the stakeholders, a red, green, yellow, what we should stop, what we should keep going, and she captured their actual comments in this chart, and those are from parents, students, and teachers and leaders who were present.
Okay,
But
so
they're
those are actual one-off comments,
Yeah,
not the
actual
synthesis of the
Not a
group. Okay, that's good, because some of the things that I saw there, I think we're already doing, and it seemed like somebody didn't know we were already doing it.
Yes,
And
which
so
is true when you
that's
engage
what made
the
me
public.
wonder, right?
We
Okay.
ask for people to say what we should keep doing, so things that we're already doing to keep doing are listed.
Yes, but there were things in the start doing that I believed we are already doing, and so that's helpful to know that those are just individual comments.
That's also feedback.
Maybe it's a marketing.
I mean, for example, it says start recognizing GPA and higher in the middle school. I think that we.
2.5 GPA.
Well, that's really good feedback, because for our honor program that this specific person is speaking to, there are no awards given out for 2.5s.
I
And
see.
they're wanting us to acknowledge students who
At
have 2.5 instead of at.
Okay, and that's more complex. Okay, I get it.
Ms. Gosney.
Yes.
In addition to that, I know that in some of the feedback groups, there are things that we are already doing, either in the middle school that should happen in the upper school, or things that, vice versa, things that are happening in the upper school that stakeholders are wanting some overlap in the middle school as well. So those would be some of the things you recognize.
And so is there a closing the loop with some of the folks who are there? For example, another comment was actually do something with the children after school, clubs that inspire them, not just daycare.
So during the good of the order, that was also something that we've addressed, and Mr. Chu's over the after-school program, and will come and give a presentation to the school site council and stakeholders in regards to that.
Okay, good. Good.
What happens with these comments? Thinking about Liz is saying, so what?
Yeah. The first thing is, because this is a compliance thing, so the first thing is just to make sure that you've captured feedback from all the stakeholders.
Right, that's parent engagement.
So this is done, then I think the leaders and the people who actually draft the next set of this will sort of incorporate as best they can the feedback, and then this board ultimately will review it and approve it. So this is a good place where if there's anything that you particularly lean into or concerned about, this is probably this time or maybe the next time you want to bring up, I saw this come up in the feedback, what are we doing about this? Because ultimately you're going to approve it and hold leadership accountable to it.
The next step is to share this feedback out to the school site council so they can see it captured as you do. The second activity is to look at the feedback against the 8 state priorities and determine what recommendation can the council make to the board that will support some of the changes that came up through the feedback. And so that they can look at fiscal impact and they can look at how to capture a recommendation to the board.
What's the timeline for that? Is it like the next board meeting or the last?
I'm not sure. I know that the LCAP timeline is the same as the budget timeline, so I'm not quite sure when.
June meeting. Yeah. So I would just say there, I want to make sure that we're using it as an opportunity for parent education too. For example, I noticed the comment under the STOP section on student services. Stop telling parents about special education services. Stop telling parents that special education services cannot be provided to students because MWA does not have those kinds of services. To me, this is a parent education piece where at a certain level of special education, we are not equipped to do that, and that's why that's handled through our SELPA and through West Contra Costa Unified School District. And that is like that at every school. There's a certain level of special education services, but if a child has very severe needs, that sometimes has to happen in special day, which we do not have here. So it's not that it's the law that it has to be provided in the correct format, so we can't stop telling them if we don't have it, right? And so I just want to make sure that when comments surface that require some further education, that we're able to do that. Same thing, there was a comment here about begin expediting the process of removing stakeholders who are toxic to the community. So I wasn't sure whether, is that parents asking for families, kids to leave? Is it certain kids to leave? Is it teachers asking for teachers to leave? Unclear, like who's saying that. But important to make sure that the people in the room understand what the law is around those issues. And the school site council is an input body, but it's also a parent education and community and staff education body. And so the leaders in the space, I just want to make sure there's clarification on some of the things happening as well, without targeting anybody in particular who might have said it, but just to bring it in the space when everybody has seen this.
Absolutely.
I found it interesting that I guess there is some, negative feedback about the online courses, which I think, probably like Dave will probably rehash on this, but because we kind of spent quite a bit of time on the online learning and, getting those tools and setting it up. And I don't know how prevalent were those, but I think less screen time, like less online courses and things like that.
Well, I think it's important to say in the space that nearly always, except when we're trying to offer something very special that we otherwise wouldn't offer, somebody talked about Chinese here, for any of our general course offerings, we would always prefer to have a teacher. And I just want to say that in the space. We have gone to this online learning option a couple of times because we have not been able to find a teacher. And so, or a teacher's been on leave, right? And so it's certainly a second best choice for most things. And I hope that the community understands that we would always prefer to have a teacher, a real teacher, a live person in the classroom who actually knows the subject matter. Okay, did anybody else have any comments about that document?
I was interested in the moldy lunches.
Yeah.
Stop serving moldy lunches.
Stop serving.
I was like, really?
Really? Yeah.
And then I also wanted to make note of the fact that they were asking for a wellness center to deal with stress and anxiety.
Yeah.
And that, that's totally aligned with the book that we just read, talking about those issues.
Right, well, and I wondered, how does that relate to restorative justice? And is it part of that, or is it different from that, or, right?
There's a lot of things in here.
Yeah, there are a lot of comments in here, so that seemed like a really productive session. Okay, on to the next thing. Ms. Garai, is this a good moment? Would you like to have a break for a quick moment? Okay, do you need a break? Does anybody need a break? Okay.
Eso solo pasaba al principio de la junta.
No, pero los comentarios públicos se pueden hacer en cualquier artículo de cada punto.
Sí, es requerido por la ley. Hay algunos artículos que es requerido por la ley que uno dé comentario público en ese artículo, pero las juntas gobernadoras tienen flexibilidad de cuando pasa el comentario público y nosotros hacemos el comentario público durante el inicio de la junta, al comienzo de la junta cuando tenemos el comentario público. Y chequeamos eso con nuestro sí, contra el Branagh, pero también con nuestro council. Podemos hablar después de la junta, pero no puedo interrumpir la junta cuando está pasando, pero yo puedo hablar con usted después de la junta, si tiene preguntas sobre eso.
Ya, porque el Branagh dice que el comentario público se puede hacer general al principio y después en cada artículo cualquier comentario público se puede hacer, pero podemos hablar después. Pero por ley lo tienen que dejar que uno haga comentario público.
Podemos hablar después de la junta.
All right, we are now moving on to the compensation study report. Okay, I think that's you, right? Yes. Okay.
Do you have to hook in at some point, Mr. Meyer? Is it on here? I'm going to walk you through some slides to make a proposal before we do our budget proposal for next year about faculty salaries.
So the idea of this presentation is to talk about the current scale and daily rate, make a connection to market forces and faculty retention, and present and discuss various scenarios for faculty increases, where Mr. Mai will come in. Contextually, we're focused on faculty for now because we started a process of trying to do analysis for all of our different kinds of positions, but due to some different circumstances, time got away from us. We wanted to make sure we were able to at least get the faculty one to be discussed for the budget cycle. We think our higher-level admin salaries are probably pretty competitive. The next group we really want to look at carefully is staff, which are hourly employees. But for now, the bulk of what we do are teachers, so we're going to start with looking at them. So the general teacher salary scale features that we have in our current scale is we have a daily rate. All teachers are paid on a daily rate, basically, if you're a public school teacher. And the daily rate times the number of service days gives you the salary. It's usually, the daily rate may vary between districts and individual charter schools. Instructional days vary by district. You have anywhere from 185 to 199 service days. Salaries are usually organized in steps that are organized by the number of years of experience, typically. Additional step increases are given for additional education beyond a bachelor's and teacher credential. Teachers accrue no vacation time in these setups, but you do accrue sick time and personal time. Teachers are not paid on a 12-month cycle because they don't work 12 months. So usually 10 to 11-month payout, with some being withheld over the course of the year to try to help offset the fact that they're not working during one of those months. So those are general salary scale features in any public school in California. So our current salary scale features are the following. We have a daily rate that we generate. The Excel spreadsheet handout given to the board sort of shares what that looks like now. We have more service days than most any other charter school and district school in the area. The current scale is organized by steps in quotation marks, which roughly equal the number of years of experience of our teachers. The current scale is organized in the following ways. So typically, teachers who don't have credentials earn less to start out with because they don't have the credentials. We want to honor the fact that people who have their credentials should get paid a little bit more. They're coming in ready to go. Some additional consideration is given to add a step to the base salary if they have other experience before they join us. So if they worked as a tutor or an after-school program for a number of years, we want to try to find ways to credit them that way. Additional increases of salary are based on having a graduate degree, master's, doctorate, a national board certification. Faculty earn retention bonuses in 4-year increments right now. So it varies by staff level, but faculty earn additional stipends for additional responsibilities such as coaching, being a club advisor, taking on additional leadership responsibilities such as content lead, grade level lead, etc. Again, teachers accrue no vacation time in our system, and teachers are not paid on a 12-month cycle. Those are all the features of the current. Connection to market forces and retention. So faculty salary scale has not been revised since 14-15. NWA is not in the top 3 for Bay Area salaries for teachers in public schools or charter schools. When we compare by daily rates and step scales, NWA has more service days for teachers than other schools. And while we offer great environment and resources, we must stay competitive for base salaries.
So the board understands what we're talking about here. When you're talking about this, are you talking about it with or without the $12,000 COLA?
We never talk about it with respect to the COLA ever, because that's a separate thing. It's called a temporary COLA for a reason. So we're only looking at salaries.
Okay, because on the next page it says it includes the COLA, and so that's
No, we're just talking about additional compensation and benefits we offer.
Okay, I see.
So these are additional benefits we offer, which are about the $12,000 temporary COLA stipend, the program for employees who are first-time home buyers or have educational debts. We have that program. We have a tuition assistance program where employees can earn a benefit up to $20,000 to help pay down tuition costs. And we have the retention bonuses, which we talked about.
and our benefits, medical benefits package is also pretty competitive. So these are the additional examples of additional pieces that are part of compensation. And when we look at, and so Mr. Mine, what he's going to show you is going to bear this out too, but I just want to give you a preview. When we look at other traditional school districts, their steps usually increase in 2% increases. When we looked at their steps, so from year to year, it's about 2% increase. We look at charter schools, on average, their steps are 4%. So what we do, or what we have done historically at Making Waves, is do 3% with an additional 1 to 2% for performance. So we're sort of in the middle, but when we look at those steps that you're going to see in a minute, you should just know that these traditional school districts scale up slower, and the charter schools scale up a little bit faster in annual increases. So scenarios proposed, we're going to look at is to target putting MWA in the top 3 against area districts and charter schools combined. We're going to show you scenarios of increase of 8, 10, and 12% increases over the current salary scale, and we would ask you to consider maybe doing this over a 2-3 year period. So those are the scenarios. Mr. Mai? Great.
So, Mr. White, can I just ask a question about this? So this is the sheet you just handed us, right?
Yes, we go back.
Okay, so I would just like some clarification on this, because San Rafael is not a unified school district, and it's 2 districts, elementary
Correct.
and high school, and the high school teachers make quite a lot more
Correct.
than elementary, so I'd like to know, is this high school,
So-
or is this elementary school? And I just want to make sure we're comparing what we want to be comparing here.
Yes, very good. The thing is, because all the school districts, they combine to one, and in some fact, they're separated out. The school districts, what I did, I combined and averaged that. This is the average for 2 of them together. So I averaged the high school and elementary together, because to compare the apple to apple, all the school district has a 1 rate compared to 12, but some of them are separate, so I averaged those 2 numbers to come up with this number.
Yeah, I would prefer to see the real numbers there, because one of the reasons why San Rafael's, sorry, this is my home district, so one of the reasons why the high school district is so high is that it has to compete against other districts that only have high schools in its area, like TAM Union, which is, Mill Valley, right? And so there are numerous districts in the Bay Area, 9 counties, that are high school only districts, and those teachers tend to get paid more, and we need to have our high school teachers be competitive with those. And so we may at some point need to have a difference between our pay schedule for middle school and below and high school and above, but it's more relevant for us to look at what the high school salaries are here, because it's also the high school that we have the hardest challenging and the most challenging hiring issues with, where we have vacancies most often. So if we could just have the revised chart that shows us San Rafael High School here, and if you want to show both high school and elementary, that's fine. But I think it's important that the board starts to get knowledgeable about this issue and about the fact that in a lot of places, high school teachers are making more money, particularly than when you start talking about needing to have a school that is attracting enough competent teachers in math and science.
Is middle school considered high school, part of the high school?
Middle school is
Middle school
elementary
is always
school.
elementary school.
Right.
Yeah, so I worked at LA Unified, middle school was secondary.
But
I think part of Mr. Mai's challenge was, for him, being the numbers guy, he wanted to simplify it in a way that made it easier to compare. What I hear you saying, and I agree with you, we need another layer of granular comparisons. We compare apples to apples.
Yeah, these aren't real numbers.
Well, they're real numbers, but they're not comparing
they're an
the right
average
level of people
Right.
to the right level of people.
Well,
which
but
I
they're
agree
not
with.
real numbers, they're an average he created by taking the steps of each organization.
Yeah, but they do anchor us. So I do agree with you that they're not disaggregated enough, but they are based on real numbers. These are not made up numbers.
Okay.
So the trend that we want you to look at and give us feedback on is so when you see these numbers, you can see where we are in comparison. And that's really the point of it, is just to see where we are in comparison.
Yeah, we need to be higher, that's clear, but
Yeah.
I want to know how much higher we need to be.
Yeah, agreed. We can go back and get that.
So does this suggest that if we were looking at the San Rafael High School number on this chart,
It'd be
that
even higher,
the
right?
difference would be even greater?
Yes, yes.
So I passed out two worksheets. One is so we compared to the top 3 charter school, and also the top 3 to the school district.
Wait, can you just share that in the space, because the board needs to know what they're looking at. Go ahead.
We currently have 2 different scales for middle and high school now, and this is an average of our 2 scales put together too, correct?
Because what happened is we asked 10 charter schools and 10 school districts. They give us like one number for the whole school, a whole school district. They don't break it out like elementary or high school. So to be compatible apple to apple, we have to average out us and also the San Rafael. Otherwise, you can compare elementary to other school districts or other charter school with other charter school. They give us one number for the whole school. So that's why we average out to see the correct number.
Nice. All right.
And the difference between the middle school and high school on our current scale is maybe $2,000. It's not a big difference.
Okay, I didn't know we had different scales, so that's a good learning point in this.
So for San Rafael, there's no difference in pay from step 5 to 13?
Yeah, interesting. Some school district that their flat rate is at a certain step that there is no increase. So I saw many school districts that have the same thing. They just at a certain
Same in San Francisco.
step there is flat amount. So no increase.
You max out. A friend of mine's been teaching in Castro Valley for 25 years. He maxed out a long time ago. So
do you want to highlight some of the features, Mr. Matt?
Okay. So I can show some of the. So to compare apple to apple, because we can compare salary because our school have more service day than other school. So you can see on the top here at the top, we compare the charter school. We have about instruction day, we less than other charter school, the top 3. But we have more PD day and the Saturday, and we have the service day. We are about 12 to 14 day more than other school. But you can see that our salary is compare. So I think the better way to compare is we do by daily rate because compare apple to apple. Otherwise, because we have more service day than other schools, so that's why we compare daily rate.
that's a really good way to do it. That's a really good way to do it.
So yeah, and we work with Mr. Nelson and Ms. Godfrey on it. So currently, making way about $255 a day at daily rate compared to submitting $298. And Envision, this is the top 3 charter school. So we have 10 of them, but we picked the top 3. Leadership is $50,000, but they have daily rate is $270 because their work day per work day is 185. We're 196. If you have any question on this, if we say we project to give them increase.
Yeah, can you
Sorry,
go back?
can you go back to the charter school page a minute, Mr. Mike, because we don't have that in the handout. We
Yeah. We have 2 handouts. One of the.
One's yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so I have 2 of the same.
On the top.
I have 2 the same.
It's like one of those shit pictures.
There we go, okay. I got it. Sorry, I did have 2 the same, just to say. Now I have 2 different. All right, thank you. No, it was, yeah, but mine really were, no, but mine really were the same. I just want to say that. And they really were the same. Okay. All right, now I see.
So one of the
Okay,
things.
this is helpful because this shocks me because I didn't realize that charter schools were lower paying than some other, than some traditional public school districts. So that's kind of a surprise for me to see when I look at Summit and Envision.
Yeah,
right?
But you have different market forces. It sounds like San Rafael was responding to, because San Rafael and San Francisco were two of the highest districts. And so what we want you to sort of anchor in is that this daily rate here is, in terms of the average of the top three, we'd still be $22 less per day given our current scale. So, and again, we didn't take all these, we said, here's the average of the top three. So, and because charter schools tend to continue to increase step over years, whereas the districts tend to freeze, this is more of our competitive group in some respects. So we want to keep increasing. We want to make sure we continue to have increases and that we keep pace over time. So when we look at the different levels of increase, we want you to also pay attention to, let's say, step 5, step 10, where do we compare against some of these other schools?
Well, this also highlights for me that, the COLA stipend was critical, because without that, we wouldn't have been competitive.
As competitive, that's right.
Right.
So do you want to go and show the next page
Yeah.
now? So what we're proposing are a couple of different levels that we could increase it that would make us more competitive. At 8%, we get it, so we're pretty much close, but not necessarily past or even, but we get pretty close. And column Z is the average of charter schools. And so yeah, we're still just a little bit behind at 8%. Okay.
Yeah, you see, like, if we give 8%, we step 1 with a $2 behind other school, charter school at the top 3 average. So.
But does this take into account that the other charter schools may be increasing at the same time that we are?
No, it just says, here's what we know today, and so we'd have to continue to look at this, and you may direct us, you need to look every 2 years, or you need to look more often, but it's a big fiscal impact, so that's what we're proposing to do it over a couple of years, but we know that once we do that, by the time that happens, we could be behind yet again, so we have to keep going out and figure out how we want to tackle this.
I have a question, Mr. Nelson. Does it also consider, was there any data available showing where they might have incentivized different areas of content like STEM, engineering, technology?
I don't think that this is only averages.
This is just base salaries.
And did you ask any of the charter schools about if they gave people higher salaries if they worked in STEM fields or anything like that?
You see, they give a stipend.
Okay, so
stipend to work different stuff. Yeah.
So their salary pay scale was the same for all teachers.
They give, we ask to give us the same for everybody.
Okay, that's helpful.
But so do we know, I think this question is key here. Do we know if any charter schools provide a secondary bump or a stipend of some kind for teachers teaching calculus, let's say, or AP physics? So in a public school district that has a union, that's not permissible, right? But are any charter schools? I'm not saying it is at all. I'm just wondering if anybody is doing that, right? Because private schools can do that if they want, right? I don't know. Are charter schools doing that? I have no idea. Do we know that?
I didn't see that. When we asked them feedback, we didn't see that.
Nobody had said that. Okay.
Extra
all right.
pay.
That's good to know. I just wondered.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean it's not happening. So
It doesn't mean it's not happening.
Let's ask and try to probe more.
Probably in engineering and physics, yeah, I would wonder.
But I had the same question, but based on what he asked, so far no, but we can go back again and probe because, again, my sense is different charter networks have different practices. Some are very transparent about things like this. Others, they will pay what they think are stars more and they'll never talk about it or publicize it. They do it sort of off the books and they don't talk about it. So I don't know if they would volunteer that, but if they have a program they actually do it, then I think they would hopefully share that with us.
Well, and they're having to be very transparent now. So if they didn't share it before, they're going to have to share these sort of things now, right?
Do you know the salary increase trends for the charter schools? Like, because you mentioned that they might be actually increasing more, so maybe the gap won't close. So do you know how this average kind of progressed for public or charter schools over the years?
No, what we know is that districts tend to do raises less often to their scales. And we know that charter schools do them, but they don't, well, so we tried a couple of different ways. We had an online system where we were asking charter schools to voluntarily put their information in so we could create a database. And they were really slow in doing it. And so that's why we sort of got panicked. So we're gonna have to do something to intervene so we can get this information. And once Mr. Mai reached out directly with people using relationships, we were able to get some data, but we don't have necessarily, charter schools don't typically put their information into a public database where you can be tracking these things over time. So it seems to be based more on leveraging relationships. But
this is a tremendous amount of work.
Yes, yes.
it is, but Mr. Mai has built these relationships, and so it was a little bit easier to do for him. It was really helpful. I think what they've given us is accurate. Do you want to show the 10% one?
Yeah, let's see 10%.
Yes.
Yeah, and you should know, Brock, in regular public school districts, you saw this just recently with Oakland. I mean, teachers are fighting for 2% raises after not having had a raise for 5 years.
Okay.
Right?
So, our teachers are going to go on strikes? Is that what we're doing?
No.
No, we want to be competitive.
Oh, okay.
We're being
You're
proactive.
speaking that in the atmosphere.
Yes, I know.
But I would say that
No one get any ideas.
what we've tried to do at Makemakers Academy, what we've tried to do is try to be a step ahead of where we anticipate there's going to be pain points. We know that this is an issue. Like, being able to stay competitive salary-wise, but also for our employees to be able to afford to live here is a real issue.
Yeah.
So we want to get out in front of it before it becomes an issue. So at 10% now we're not, $2 behind. We're starting to be, at least in some instances, a little bit ahead, but not much. And you want to show the 12%? 12% now, we're a little bit, now we've got a little comfortable reading room, at least against the average. And the increase is about $6,000 for step 1 based on our current scale. So those are the comparisons. We feel like by trying to benchmark it against the top 3, we're not saying we want to be at the top level, but we definitely don't want to be, at the top third. We want to be top 3, and so this is a good sort of middle of the road way to bring up salaries, but not be competing against ourselves.
So after this analysis, are you all recommending the 12 or the 10 or where are you all on it after being deep in this?
So another thing I want to show you, the last thing is the cost too. So you can see
Mr. Mai's big on the cost.
Yeah, we're financing the cost too. What's the bottom line? How to fund it? So on from 2 to 8, about $50,000, and every 2% is about $50,000 increase. So we want to open it out, and do we do over 3 years or 2? Ms. Nelson say do 3 years, 2 years. Yes. So what the cost is. So.
I also just say, coming from a background of being in a for-profit organization, which I know others around this table have been, is that when you're dealing with retention, an organization can spend up to $1 million a year trying to retain employees or dealing with turnaround and hiring and having a Miss Dodson out there hitting the streets all over this country, all over California. So that's something to consider as well, as how much is Making Waves Academy spending just to find and retain teachers, and is this, hopefully the board is seeing this as an investment, right? Obviously. Yeah. I'm just getting my 2 cents.
It's excellent perspective. Daryl, do you want to add any private? Yeah, would you want to add any private sector HR perspective to this?
Only in the sense that trying to get out ahead of this is what everyone tries to do, but that's not all the time, but always necessarily make that happen. So I applaud you for the work that you've done to pull this together and at least put it in front of us. And to Ms. Carr's point, you'll always be in a reactive mode in some way, shape, or form. I think the trick is, what's your percentage? Like, how reactive are you versus how proactive can you be? So you can't cover everything all the time, but you can minimize the damage by being proactive.
So Chad, go ahead.
I think one other thing, and it doesn't have to happen anytime soon, but one other thing to consider when you're looking at the total package is to not only look at the salary piece of this, but on that slide where you have the COLA, the benefits and everything else, it's also important to make sure that we're communicating to all of our members, faculty, staff, everyone, sort of what the total package is, so that the focus isn't just on the salary, because the COLA and the benefits and everything else really are very much a part of what that entire package includes. So if there, lots of organizations really talk about total comp as opposed to just focusing on the salaries.
And I did ask the other charter schools, they don't have like the 12,000 COLA at all. So, yeah, we asked that too.
Having come from a place where I, funded my own graduate and people funding their own undergraduates, the up to $20,000 tuition support is a significant thing, right? Sort of making sure we're
What's the
assessing
total
value.
cost versus the 3 year? Like you kind of assume that that's the total cost in 3 years, like in the cost tab. I couldn't quite understand.
So it would be per year over 3 years.
Okay.
So, so what happened, I did the analysis on the cost. What I have, the current stat right here, like if we want to move them up to, say, 8%, how much cost? So I want to see how the current salary, it would increase to meet the 8% increase, how much cost us?
That's $100,000 a year. If you do 8%.
Yes, a year, correct. 300,000, yes.
So we stepped it up. In year one, it would be 100,000 more, and then an additional 120. So it's really 220,000, right? So it's a cumulative year over year, but yeah.
Okay, so like we kind of assume this will kind of go for 3 years then. Sort of.
Not that it would go for 3 years, that we would phase it in over 2 or 3 years.
Just phasing in.
So that the budget doesn't take an enormous hit from one year to the next, but that we are slowly increasing it.
So
But I mean, we don't necessarily have to do that.
No, you can do it all at once. So
Are you looking for recommendations from us around how we're sort of feeling after looking at this, of whether we want you to, for fiscal 19, look at 8, 10, or 12, and whether for fiscal 19 you want us to think about a full phase-in or a 1/2 or 1/3 phase-in? Is that what you're looking for?
I think I can tell you the ask. I first want to anchor it first in this idea, though, that we have looked at total compensation for a while, and we've done it at the exclusion of looking at salaries. So we just think it's time to do it. So we're going to ask for your direction also in giving us some guidance on how often you want us to look at it. We can do it on our own, and obviously we bring back anything that we thought was sort of staggeringly new, but we want to start, as we're systematizing, we want to start thinking about how often we want to do this. Secondly, we want to make sure we're setting the message that our teachers and our staff and our employees are really important, and that we value them, and so we're going to continue to look at these types of things to make sure we're paying people competitively. So this is a really clear sign that we think it's important. And the thing I want to highlight here before I answer this question too is that Summit is sort of the daily rate buster, as is San Francisco is with the school district. So they pay a good $20, $30 difference between Envision and leadership and us. So by averaging it, we're not even, again, trying to say we were trying to be Summit, but we also want to be well above Envision and leadership. So the average, we think, is a good measure for now. So our ask of you is it right to be trying to, position ourselves in the top 3? Does that make sense to you all? And would you like us to do it over 2 years, 3 years? So it's going to come through in the budget. You don't have to approve anything here, but is your guidance to do it over 2 years, 3 years? Do we have discretion over how we would recommend doing it? Those are really the 2 good questions. I mean, 8, 10, you can see 8, 10, 12%. If you have ideas on that too, we would recommend 12%. That's what we would recommend on top.
Thoughts? Do folks have thoughts on this? Chad, you haven't, I don't know if have you been able to adequately follow along, and do you have thoughts on any of this?
Yeah, for the most part, one thing I had a hard time picking up was what the full year impact of the 12% increase on salaries would be.
Can you have the last part?
So I think that's the last page here in the packet where the full year impact.
$416,000.
I mean, it's three, if we go to 12%, it's 416,000 if we did it all in 1 year. And if we did 10%, it's 360,000, 8% is 310,000. That would be the total cost for a single year. If we phased it in, you know, we could spread it out however we wanted.
When we first looked at this,
Gotcha. Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Chad.
I was just going to say, I mean, one thing I'd like to keep in mind too is just, in general, kind of backing out kind of the default, what would we normally have done just as kind of like a step increase or as a scale increase if we're going to do a 2 or 3% increase. Is this 8, 10, or 12% increase on top of that, or that this would just be inclusive of?
No, I think it would be on. I think it would be on top of what we're proposing, because right now we already usually give people somewhere between a 3 to 5% increase, so this would be on top of that.
Okay, so one thing I would, so yeah, this is increasing every step, Chad, by the 12% or 10%, whatever it is. I also, so is it true that every comparative source you found steps it up every year? Because I've seen steps where it's multiple years and then a step, multiple years and then a step. Did you see that evidence of that, or you saw every year a step?
Well, it's hard to determine. They just put the steps. The steps don't align to any years, anything. They just, typically, they just show steps.
Okay, so for us, are the steps actual years?
Yes, but,
okay,
well, what happens is it's also for your benchmark when you come in. And then the steps automatically sort of follow a cost of living increase type of rate increase.
Okay.
So you're really not, you're always looking to see, does that pretty much align with that? But once people are in, then it pretty much follows the step.
Okay, so I'll just say that I know, and I'm not sure if it's still that way this year, but in San Rafael, it was not a step. You do not get to a new step every single year. Like, there are multiple years spent at a given step.
Correct.
Right, and so you're saying we're tracking it, and we're saying every step is 1 year. It would be helpful, I think, for the board to understand at some of your benchmarks is every one of their steps a year. And I can probably get some of that information if you weren't easily able to get it. But if somebody's has to spend 5 years or 4 years before they get to the next step in one district, and only 1 year in another, then you want to know that, right? Because, like, are you getting to that in 13 years or 26 years or, 75 years or whatever it is, right? So, so I just want us to be clear what we're looking at about that. So I do
13 steps is the norm, sort of.
Well, that's the norm on his chart. And there are more than that. Because I've seen the step and column go all the way through 25 years, right? Through
30 years.
Retirement, 30 years through the retirement period.
Because we compare 13 because our school is 13. That's why I compare up to now.
Right. So, so I would just, I think we need a little bit more data about that. I think, we look to your recommendation once you've really done a deep dive on all these things. But it might make sense to phase it in, only because, we always want to make sure about this COLA, and is the COLA filling a need that is really important to fill, right? Because the cost of living here is so high, right, compared to the Central Valley. And so, at what point, I think we always have to look, as Daryl said, it's the total compensation package that we want to look at, that we want the employee to understand, but it's also something we have to understand. Even though we want our base salaries to be competitive, we also have to look at the fact that we're looking at the comprehensive total compensation package.
I would just say, though, that the basis for the temporary COLA is that that's the part that can fluctuate.
Right.
And that could go away completely, or it could go down, or go up. But the part that is baseline, that I feel strongly about, is people's salaries should be competitively marked. Because if anything happens and that were to go away, like, they need to know, like, this is my salary.
Right.
Period.
I agree.
Right. And it needs to be comparable.
And my bias would be, you asked the question about how often we do this. I think once you get the baseline and the process, which you've got, you're 90% there as far as I can see. I think we should look at it every year.
Okay.
This deeply every year?
Once you got it set,
Yeah.
it's not as much legwork to go look at it every year, and that's what happens in industry, is you look at it every year. It doesn't necessarily mean the range is moving, but you look just to make sure.
You just look, you do a gut check every
Or
year.
to see if there's some spike that's happened.
It's something in the industry every year, I agree, but also I guess given the lack of formal data and kind of relying on the personal relationships, maybe a year might be, too much, but
It's every 2 years.
I kind of, I guess, agree with that, I guess we should probably at least aim for a year and see how that goes.
Yeah, because you can always slow it
The
down.
review's a good idea.
You're not learning.
I want to go back to Alton's point about the importance of the base salary, though. I think that's really important, and we know how critical teachers are in our mission. So I would support your 12%. And the difference between phasing it in between 8% and 12% is only $35,000
Per year.
per year, and that's really not that much.
Yeah.
I mean, considering all the money that we spend at the end of all of our meetings, that is not that much money.
Yeah.
No.
Okay, and we just read the book about the importance of psychological and emotional factors.
Yeah.
So if someone's going to tell me, you told me to read this book, you're going to hear about it. I read every page. Between 8% and 12%, that's a big boost.
Yeah.
12% is going to get you a lot of people lining up in your recruitment process.
Well, I appreciate that. I hope so. I appreciate the board's comments and support. I think from seeing all the numbers in the proposed budget for next year and going to the finance committee, I'm seeing though that our scale, incremental increases of $300,000-$400,000 over 8 different units.
Yeah, it adds
up to we're at $1 million, $2 million over more than what we thought we would be quickly. So I'm just trying to give us different tools to get where we want to go, but knowing that each department has different asks.
Sure.
We're going to be going back and telling people some of the asks you can't have, but this one I feel strongly about. We want to make sure we do. So whatever way we can do that, whether it's 1 year or over 2 years, we want to be able to do it.
Yeah, I support the 12% as well. I would say there are some reasons to phase it in over 2 years rather than 1 year. And I think part of that is always looking at an assessment for the cost of living and what it actually is in the Bay Area, and allows us to always understand, like, has there been a big change in the rental market, for example, or not, so that we're always looking at that, so that we also know too, I mean, we chose the COLA stipend for a certain reason, which was that that number seemed to be a meaningful amount in each paycheck. But we also need to understand, like, do we ever need to adjust that COLA stipend? Does it need to be higher or does it need to be lower, right? It's this other component. And phasing it in over 2 years, I think, allows us to look at the picture holistically and yet still provide a significant bump to people between this year and next year. So that would be my sense, but I wouldn't stretch it out over 3 years. That just seems like kind of a uselessly long time.
I agree. I support the 12% as well. Do you have any plans to change the COLA as well, or not at this point?
I think not at this point. I mean, I think that there are some people in our organization largely who understand the COLA, and there are some people who don't like it. They like it for teachers, but the fact that it's a benefit means everybody has to get it. So everybody from an hourly employee to someone like me. And I think that's the issue, is that because we really wanted to make sure we attract it's a tool for people who typically wouldn't get bigger raises or bonuses or anything else, like our hourly staff and our teachers. But because it's a benefit, everyone has to get it. So if we're thinking about it from that standpoint, I want to make sure that first we're dealing with the salary increase. Then we come back next year when maybe there's less on the table, and we can say, okay, what should be the cadence of looking at the cost living stipend? What other information do we have about the economy and housing? Because that was really tied to that. So if that changes, then we should alter the temporary COLA stipend to reflect that. That's what it's meant to do.
Okay. And just for my curiosity, do we, I guess, lose any employees against any of these 3, once in a while, frequently, or?
I don't know that that's true based on what I know about the teachers who've left, that they're going to those 3 schools per se. I know that one did maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago. I don't think that we're losing teachers necessarily because of pay per se, but I don't know that. I don't want to pretend to know if There's some teachers that maybe have given that information in an exit interview on their way out the door. But my thought is we want to be out ahead of it, because I do think that for Lisa, in terms of Ms. Dodson, in terms of what she does to recruit, it's nicer if I'm doing my homework and I haven't started Making Waves Academy and I look at salary scales that are publishable. I want to be able to feel like I'm competitive with that. Yeah.
So, the exit data is something we really should start to pay attention to.
Yeah, agreed.
Regardless of what the volume is, the qualitative data would be really, really important.
Agreed.
All right, any other input for Mr. Mai and Alton on this? Otherwise, I guess what we would say is maybe you can, after we've gone through it, there'll be another meeting with the Finance Committee, and then are you thinking that we don't see this again until June when we're looking at it in the real budget, or are you wanting to have another discussion about it or presentation about it in May? You just want to put it in your report in May? Like, what is the next step in your mind?
I think it's to answer your question. It's about so we can make sure we're comparing the right levels to the right levels.
Right.
Making sure that we find out, is there any other pay for other schools for STEM?
Yeah.
So I think it's answering the questions.
The size of the steps.
Yeah, so and the size of the steps. So I think it's reporting back on those three things in May.
Okay.
But then it's incorporating the actual increases into the budget. We won't bring this back to you.
Yes. Okay.
Except for the answer to the questions.
Okay, and then the other question for you to think about answering is, if this is 12 for this, how does this relate to what we were already talking about of the 3 or 4%? Right? Because that's the thing, it's 12 on top of 4, which is 16, or is it, because that's what we were talking about at the Finance Committee, just general cost of living raises that we don't fight about our teachers with, like union schools do, right? Where they say, sorry, you're not getting a cost of living increase.
I assume we'd have to do a study, right? So the first thing we'd have to do is just change the scale to reflect what we want it to be moving forward. So that's any new employee, here's what it is. And then we'd have to do a study of, if we gave increases to the current staff, where would they fit in the way we look at scale? And does it match? If we give 8%, if we give whatever the percentage is, we want to make sure that it fits within the new scale, whatever their salaries are.
Right.
And I don't know what that number, I don't know what percentage that is.
So we're looking at these percentages and not thinking about just an across-the-board increase like we talked about with the Finance Committee.
Well, they're two different things.
Question.
I don't know how, I think we would treat them differently, but I think what I heard your question was different, which is people are going to get somewhere between 3 and 5%. Right now, 3% is standard. That was in the slides. And we save 1 or 2% for supervisors to give an additional per performance.
Right.
But the variable is 3 to 5, and mostly 3, 3.5, so that's the average. And then if I heard the question being, if we add the 12% on top of whatever the normal cost of living increase is, are we scaling it appropriately? And so I think we'd have to do a study of that.
I think that's what we have to figure out, because are we really talking about a 17% increase for teacher A, or are we talking about 12?
Yeah, we can do a study of that. That'll be another question we can bring back in May too.
Okay.
I just want to clarify too, because some teachers, they already meet above the step, they don't get the increase at 8 to 12%. So because some teachers already above the step, they earn more, they won't get 12%. Just want to clarify.
That's probably not true. That's probably not many that's in that case, unless they're a lead teacher.
Okay, so we just have to come back in May with all of these pieces. Okay, this is a great start on this. Okay. All right, we have, quite a number of additional things to get through, and I apologize for how we're going to run long, but it sort of undergirds my initial point about how we need more time for the meetings. Right? They'd be happy to push. Is that okay? All right, so given how far behind we are, given the fact that we have we have 2 very important topics left in the non-action item, I would like to ask the board, well, maybe we'll wait for Daryl to get back. So let's get teed up for the MWA staff survey discussion, and then when Daryl gets back, I'll entertain thoughts on the board about pushing an item to May.
What are we going to push? Gate?
No, Gate's not on here. The side report. And maybe that even means Robin would be able to comment, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, are you sure?
We're totally flexible.
Yeah, you are. It's just so nice to hear something.
We
set
could
up.
show.
That's a really good answer right now. Well done. Okay, so,
We could, I know I'm jumping into my own presentation, but we do have a short video that we put together just to highlight the Black History Month assembly that was really beautiful and led by the work of Basai. So we could just show that, and then we'll come back for the presentation in May.
that seems like it would be, because I don't want, also, when we get up there and dive into this, I don't want it to feel at all shortchanged, and I don't want at all, we had allocated 25 minutes for this, and I don't want that time to be truncated at all. So if it's okay with the board and it's okay with the presenters on this subject, I would like to push the deep dive on Basai to May, and hopefully Robin Fisher would be able to join at that time too, who's been here partnering. Working on all of this, are there any board members who object to that?
No, that sounds like a great plan.
No?
I won't be able to participate in May, so I will miss that, but certainly wishing it.
We'll send you the,
yeah.
okay. We'll send it to you, you'll have to look at it offline, okay? I didn't know you weren't in May, okay. That's all right, we'll miss you.
I
Okay.
didn't have the chance to talk to you too.
Okay, that's fine, okay. All right, so let's proceed with the staff satisfaction survey, because this is a really important thing for the board to dive into today. And then after that, we'll watch the short video, and then we'll get into the action items.
Okay. So hi, Liz Martinez, Chrissy Godfrey. We co-facilitated the staff satisfaction survey committee this year. What I really want to focus our time on today as we get going is not necessarily on the mechanics of the survey and not the mechanics of the survey, but really engage the board in a discussion around the results, which were provided to you in your packets. So my hope for the end of our time today is that you'll have a high-level overview of what the survey life cycle is. We administer this 2 times a year, but I want you to just get a feel for how it's supposed to be administered on campus. I want you to have a good understanding of the key challenges that surface from both the administration and the analysis of the survey, as well as the results. But again, primarily focusing around engaging you all in a meaningful discussion about next steps. Okay? I'm not someone who talks a lot to the slides, so I will just give you, from my perspective, how this goes. Typically, they're supposed to be, the mechanics are that the staff has an avenue to provide feedback on how satisfied they are with working here at Making Waves. The thought is that a committee that is representative of the staff will then have an opportunity to look at those results and be able to come to some conclusions and recommendations for leadership to be able to mobilize some efforts. So they provide, they're supposed to provide both growth that they see in those survey results, changes or deltas, as we the common language here, as well as some recommendations that are derived from that analysis. What's supposed to happen next is that those recommendations are presented to the leadership at Making Waves, and then we adjust accordingly and then administer the following survey. What I'd like to point out to the board here is that in our survey committee meeting, something that came up and was immediate feedback from the committee was that from their perspective, where the process seems to have broken down in the past is around the recommendations, a feedback loop, a known feedback loop on what happens to our recommendations, or where is there discussion, does the board see them, right? A lot of questions came up, which the larger thing that signaled to me is that we can do a better job at improving in those 2 steps so that we're having a full life cycle as it's intended to be.
Yep.
Okay. Chrissy, we'll talk about immediate reactions.
Yeah, so following the presentation, several things came up that were pretty clear. There were still some persisting disparities between middle school and upper school satisfaction scores. We've sort of seen a trend over the last few years. The staff participation in the survey was right around 50%. It's been a little higher in the past. We'd like to see that higher. And the survey committee itself, the folks who were volunteering to participate and who were actually able to come to the meetings, was not very diverse in terms of diversity, representing the different schools, and actual participation from the schools, because there were a few people from divisions outside the upper school that folks just had conflicts with other standing meetings or reasons why they couldn't participate. So those were 3 immediate reactions. So key next steps, one of the things that we think would be helpful is twofold. One, to provide employees with dedicated time during their workday to complete the survey. So there's actually times, hey, you're not teaching, you're not working, everybody's asked to participate in the survey. And also creating some time during the workday for the committee to meet when we go over the survey results. Scheduling was a challenge. Again, some people couldn't attend the meetings at all because they had conflicts. So figuring out how during the day we can get those meetings scheduled so that we can get the representative participation we're looking for. And then again, ensuring that the committee is really reflective of the community that we're serving in terms of representation and diversity.
Yeah, these key next steps are things that were discussed just so that we're clear on where these key next steps are coming from, because they're related but separate from what I'm going to ask you all to ponder on. These are key next steps that, just based on the immediate reaction and feedback we got from both committee members who were able to participate, not able to participate, and then the presentation that happens to the staff. So that, and I didn't highlight that part in the cycle piece of my slide, but the committee itself, part of what their task is to analyze the data, but then also put on a full staff presentation to the rest of the community to be able to see their pluses, deltas, and recommendations. So these key next steps are informed from those 2 activities. Any questions before I move on to the discussion piece of the...
Can you clarify where the survey gets completed?
Yeah, so we...
Online. It's an online survey, so people can take it wherever they feel like opening up the link in the email, and it goes to a SurveyMonkey survey.
Yeah, but I think that's tied to larger pieces of feedback that we've received around, you and I were talking about WASP, right? Or any of these other things that as a school and as a community we have to do and complete. But if we're, saying something is a priority and we're saying that people need to make time for that, then on the other side is how are we as leadership supporting that and making dedicated space for people to be able to do this, rather than saying do it when you have time. Right. Time gets away from all of us, right? So, yeah.
I think other questions will be sussed out in your essential questions. Yes. So maybe we should move to that slide and then at the end see what hasn't been sussed out by these.
Yeah, so I sent you all these ahead of time, and I know all of you read them line by line. But really, what we're trying to do here in the essential questions is engage you around, so we know what we know, right? The survey was administered, there was presentation, feedback, all of that. Given some of the challenges that presented, and you all have the full survey results as well as the committee's pluses, deltas, and recommendations, we really want to engage you around as a school, what comes next, right? How do we improve the process? How do we improve the feedback loop? And then also, how do we just support our leaders in, making some connections around, there seems to be, as we said, disparities, right? There seems to be things that persist. And so how do we help build understanding around, whether the survey is representative of the culture of the school or not? What are some strategies that we can employ to make sure that the staff survey committee itself is representative in all of those aspects, so division, representation, staff, faculty, and actual diversity itself. And then also wanting to specifically hone in on the data point around the disconnect, the perceived disconnect between staff and board members, and what you can do around that. And lastly, how can the board members support school leaders to address some of the concerns that have surfaced? So we can popcorn that out and just engage wherever you feel free to do so.
Before you do that, what I said I would do in my staff email everybody was provide my own response, and then in the
immediate aftermath of the survey, we said that the school leader should have a response. I think they're doing different things to respond to the survey, that I should have a response, and then ultimately the board should have a response. So my written response I've just shared with the board. I'm going to send it out via email to the whole staff. A couple of things I would highlight is that the history of this survey is that when Bain came in and helped us do our reorganization, they knew we were growing and we were changing. And so the staff survey was meant to capture sensitivities and concerns around how well we were communicating about the growth, how well we were communicating about the change. So there's a core of that that's in the questions. A lot of my recommendations mirror what's here, and they mirror questions around how do we sort of make sure that the process closes the feedback loop so that there is, people know where we are in the process of the recommendations. I guess a final thought or question is, it feels like one of the themes that the survey brought up is that when people have concerns, they don't quite know where to go to express them or what to do. We encourage an environment where people go to their supervisors. In the case that, for whatever reason, that's not clear or that's not working out, where do they go next? Do they go to HR? Do they come to see me? Do they come to see a board member? So I don't think we have answers to those questions, but those are the questions I know that have been asked and raised, and so I want us to just sort of be talking about that in the spirit of transparency, but also can we provide some clear roadmaps to people that when they feel disturbance in their work environment, what do they do?
Right.
So
I mean, I just want a message on behalf of the board that anybody can come and talk to any board member at any time. That's not just how we operate, that's the law, right? Anybody can come and talk to us at any time. Now, does that necessarily mean for every single person in every situation, the best course of action is to go straight to a board member? Perhaps not, but I do want to be clear about what it is what is possible. And to Alton's point, I think it would be helpful to develop some sense of, what are the different avenues? Who are the good people to talk to if you're having a situation with a supervisor where going to that supervisor doesn't feel like the best place to go. And so I think we can articulate that better. Around some of these essential questions, I mean, two of the things that I really think are key to helping not just the board understand the survey results, and by understand I mean interpret them, so that we understand where to go, is not not just for the board to understand that, but for the community as a whole, the staff and the parent community to understand it and interpret it, is if it's just half the people, how do we really know it's representative of what the staff in general feels, right? It's like when you go on Yelp, like, is it just people who are complaining about a thing that have gone onto Yelp, or is it just the people who think it's great, and everybody who feels just fine doesn't ever bother to go on Yelp? So, and that's why I think it's really critical that every single staff member fills this out, and that we create a space. Now everybody's going to have 15 minutes to privately do this, and it has to be submitted before you whatever the XYZ. So I think that piece is important because it's hard to interpret it when you wonder if it's truly representative.
Yeah.
And to this piece on the committee, I also feel like if you only have people on the committee who have volunteered to be on it, and you don't have anybody appointed by their peers to be on it, or then it's hard to know too what is. I'm not saying this is the case for the committee we had, but you can see where you have a situation where everybody volunteering for the committee has a certain idea about something, and they're volunteering for it because they want to get item X accomplished. So it seems like we need to really be thoughtful about that piece too, so that we can really interpret and understand what's going on. Because that's the point of the survey, is not just the survey, it's to understand what's going on. So I don't know if other board members have thoughts about those two pieces.
Well, I think it definitely needs to be completed during the workday. There's some trends that the upper school is not happy.
Yeah.
I think we need to explore that further.
Yeah.
Having it not be representative, I'm not sure what that means, but that's not a good thing in the survey.
Well, and not the committee committee's not representative, that means it's not, they're not just talking about ethnic and gender diversity, they're talking about maybe it's only upper school teachers and not middle school teachers, or maybe it's only teachers and no staff, or maybe it's whatever it is.
It's both and, so.
It's both and.
Yeah, it's both and. So we did have an equal number of people volunteer to participate, but we didn't have equal participation in the committee work itself. And then I believe when it was presented to the staff, one of the feedback was around ethnic and gender diversity of the committee itself.
Or the lack of it.
Or the lack thereof.
How big is the committee, or was the committee?
There's about 8 of us.
Yeah.
And that includes you guys?
Yeah.
So was
maybe
8
was the sort of goal, and then that shrunk down to 4 because of scheduling and conflicts and everything else?
No, there were more like 10 or 11 people that were slated to participate, and about 8 regularly were participating.
What was the role of the committee? Did the questions, or I mean, I just saw Alton's report, and this has been apparently done for the last 6 years. Did the questions change over the years?
Within the first 2 years, what the suggestion was that the committee should meet before the survey is administered to tweak questions. We look at them and tweak them. I don't think that's been done for a while. And the feedback was, don't change the questions too radically, because then you will lose the comparison over time. But
No, I get it. I kind of have to agree on that. That's why I asked. Like, so if the questions are changing, I couldn't understand the exact role of the committee. Like,
to interpret the data and report out, right? So the committee sees the whole vast.
no, I get it, but I guess they have nothing to do with the results. I mean, they have probably something to do with the administration of the survey, but I mean, the participation is 50%.
What is the role of it?
You know, like if the committee was more diverse, not that I should say they shouldn't, but I don't know if the results could have changed.
Well, an
Or
example.
maybe I'm just understanding this.
No, I think I understand that. I think it's more of what was brought forward in terms of what worked, because you're asked to sort of say what's working well and what's not. And so if it's too many of one group, they could see it through the lens of only their group, and that tends to be more one way or the other. And so as an example, in this case, you saw from the data that there were more dissatisfaction with upper school staff, more than participated on the committee. So the overall sort of, when the data was presented to the whole staff, it sort of landed with a thud, because it felt like more people were dissatisfied than there actually were. Because when you look at the data, and you see this in my slides, there were several places where there's a lot of things to highlight when you look at it in aggregate and disaggregated form. But because there weren't more people to bring balance to both the dissatisfaction and the satisfaction, it tended to skew more dissatisfied.
Well, and then it doesn't, right? If it just represents one particular division overarchingly, then the other division doesn't feel like it's representative of what they thought, right? And so we have to make sure that the process is, all voices are being heard and each division's point of view is being captured somehow, and so that it resonates when it's felt back. Oh yeah, this is my experience here or not. But so we don't, just to be clear, board members don't really know, because we don't know who is on the committee, we don't know what we're just talking about these essential concepts and how can we make sure that we're understanding correctly what we're seeing.
Yeah, I'm kind of trying to understand, like, you know, if the participation is an issue, or if a certain group in the school participated more so than the other, whatever the reason might be, how would like a composition of the committee would have kind of affected that? I mean, because like a certain group was more represented in the committee, you know, kind of the people that are affiliated with that group kind of participate in the survey more, and others, I mean, I'm just trying to understand what the problem is here.
I think the other thing the committee is doing is the committee is reading the qualitative comments and gleaning from that what should be brought forth, right? So there's some subjectivity in what the committee is doing. Yes, these numbers are these numbers, and who's ever on the committee, if these numbers are presented, they are what they are. But there is nuance to it, and so making sure you have a balanced committee when it comes to interpreting the data, is significant,
Yeah, I
right?
think
It doesn't
it's-
change what the data is, but it just brings a different lens.
I think it's making meaning of it, and then at the end, they have to make recommendations. The committee has to make recommendations, here's what we'd like to see next. So I think having the participation of different stakeholders to say, here's, we all agree that these are the priorities of what we should recommend next. It's probably what the value is, it's not in the actual numbers themselves.
Now, my company kind of did something recently, actually. You kind of keep doing it for the last 2 years, and despite of all the push and the reminders and everything, I think we were able to kind of reach 70%, maybe 75%.
That's good.
That's
really
good.
That's
But,
good.
you know, that's why I wouldn't say actually 50 was not so bad either.
Yes.
I mean, it certainly can be higher, but I guess one thing we did was like, I think the management certainly didn't want to take the responsibility, and we have a third-party company administer this and, you know, I guess prepare a report and submit rather than, I guess, having the employees, kind of getting involved at that. I guess certainly employees kind of dealt with that organization, but they had nothing to do with the survey result interpretation or administration or the reminders send or, you know, things like that, which might be an option maybe if, you know, internal diversity is some of a concern, or you don't want to kind of, I guess,
That might be interesting to
like
look into.
have a third party
Yeah,
kind
it's a
of get
third party,
involved
right.
rather than specific, you know,
Yeah.
employees kind of.
I would say, you know,
administering it.
a couple of years ago, Daryl and I did a series of lunches with different subgroups of teachers and actually students too. I remember talking about sharing prom stories with them as they were planning for prom. But I think that one of the things I'd like to ask of board members, I mean, I'm around a lot, so some people come to me sometimes, but I would like to have several other board members go out into the community. You know, we talked about, are we going to have a culture and climate group that looks at that? I think Margaret Watson, who's going to be joining the board, who was a teacher who designed the staff survey, might be one of the good people to go out. But any other board member that would be willing to take this on, I think going out for listening lunches on campus with teachers who want to participate, it would be a good way for the board to be able to support some of this work and also just get a better understanding of the feel of what's going on.
I agree with that. Again, going to back my experience, like once they kind of did this survey and they kind of, you know, I guess, announced the results, they had focus groups with selected employees. That same company conducted that, which is I think very similar to.
Similar idea.
Similar idea.
Not all of them, but yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree with a lot of the discussion. One thing I would ask us to think about, kind of given where we are here and what the plans are to grow and expand, is think about the cadence of the surveys. Because when you do a survey, you're setting an expectation that something is going to happen with the results, which is the right thing to do. But if we're doing them every 6 months, are we giving ourselves a chance to actually take action and make a dent on the things that we were working on last time?
By the
Great point.
Excellent point.
Right, and that frustrates the people taking the survey, it frustrates the people interpreting the survey, it frustrates leadership, it frustrates everybody on a different level. So I'm not at all advocating stopping it or not doing it, but I think we should think about the cadence to give ourselves a chance as a collective community to be more successful in attacking the things that come out of the survey and doing more of the good things that are happening. So,
6 months might be a little bit too frequent of an interval to be able to take even action, but.
And I'm not trying to create any extra work for anybody, or just have different types of surveys so that it's not all lumped into one. And if you're trying to gauge how are we doing with change management and expansion and carrying of culture from here to Pittsburgh, that could be one type of a survey that may have a different focus and a different set of actions versus this larger staff satisfaction survey, which really gets at the core.
Yeah,
So
do you have other
just
thoughts?
some different things to think about.
Yeah, no, those are all
Agree
really,
with Daryl. That's a good point.
yeah, those are all really.
I mean, I've asked a couple of times, you had the summit, what's the outcome, what are you focusing on? There are all these comments from the LCAP, from the parents, what are you gonna do about it? And then so when you're asked to do it again and nothing has really changed because it takes a long time to plan intentional change and action.
And that may be contributing to the 50%.
Yeah.
Because
People are just like, why would I do this? Nothing
I
happens.
just did this and
Right.
nothing happened, or it's
That's
the
an
same
excellent
as it
point.
was 2 years ago. And I'm not saying that's what it is, but.
No, I think that's excellent insight.
And I think I would call it a faculty and staff survey. I don't know. I wasn't sure it was teachers until I started really reading into it. Yeah, I thought it was actually clerical staff.
Or the employee survey, that to me also indicates.
That's
it's
better.
inclusive.
Yeah, that would be better. It's not really descriptive.
Because when it was built and designed back in a few years ago, the central office didn't exist, so it does need to evolve to adapt those different groups. I want to know more operationally about how our central office is doing and how our central services operations team are performing, and be able to have specific data on that in a more clear way right now.
And that was something the committee gave us feedback on, in terms of now that we've grown and our structure has had some changes, how do we also update,
grouping.
nothing that changes the content of what people are saying, but for example, you know, do I belong to leadership, do I belong to this office, and we've
Right.
changed a little bit of that, so making sure that we're also allowing people to identify the group that they belong to correctly, to make sure that when we're analyzing the data that we know what we're looking at, because part of what the discussion that we had in the committee, in one of the committee meetings, was around making sure that when we're talking about the data and we're looking at the data, that we are absolutely sure what we're talking about, right? Like, and so if I'm saying leadership, or I'm saying, you know, faculty, right? And for faculty, it's a little bit clearer because it says, are you middle school or are you upper school? And so we're able to look at that a little bit better. But then as you get, as you go up, it's a little bit more difficult. So how do you know how to apply a solution when you're not really sure
what the problem
where
is.
the root of,
of
the issue is,
And
right?
then you have the problem where when your band of who falls in that category is so small, people maybe don't want to answer because then they know that it's them, right? And so how do you preserve the anonymity of it? I also think, though, that it's important for the board and for leadership to look at not just any particular year, but look at trends, because it's the trend, to the point Elton made about what Bain said about not changing things too much year to year. You do want to look at trends, because trends are the things that can reveal areas where you need to deepen your focus.
Well, to a case in point, you know, we could switch focuses, because when we first did the survey, one of the things that was an area of weakness was the alignment to mission by the staff.
Right.
So when I look at the survey for this winter, it was the highest. I'm not sure it's the highest ever, but it was pretty high across all subgroups. The one subgroup that I saw persistently low, and I don't know if this is just because 2 people did it or 3 people did it, is the central service staff. So of all the subgroups, they're the lowest on almost all the different groups, and that was a real, like trends, that was a real thing for me. I was like, wow, like, they're not feeling connected, they're not, what's going on with that group?
Right. Yep. So, yeah, I mean, when I look at it, I have some concerns, and so I want to make sure that we really take what's reflected here seriously, and that we think about things we can do to address some of the currents that we're seeing for more than 1 year in a row. But that's the point of this, right? And as we would say with our students, we have to look realistically at what we see there and help make progress forward. And I think that, and we need to do the same thing with this. And so other than, do board members have any other thoughts about other than going out and engaging with teachers or staff members who want to engage in sort of private, like in a lunch or whatever, just to have some honest discussions? Are there other things we think we could be doing to support? Are there other things you think we should be doing to support at this juncture? If so, say now or at any other point.
In the upper school, we've unpacked the data with the upper school leadership team. Today will be for the 3rd time in preparation for the faculty deep dive tomorrow that we're doing. We've pulled in some faculty members that will help us facilitate that. Ms. Bolai and the leadership team is training, doing a crash course on facilitative leadership with some faculty members, so that, because again, pattern, a common theme in the upper school data was just around teacher-to-teacher interactions and wanting support from one another and having more interactions. and more faculty-led conversations. And so we are being very intentional with just even the way that we unpack these results, the way that we're doing it tomorrow. We're hoping for, because I know that we didn't meet the 100% mark and that we were closer to 50%, we're hoping this will also enable us to hear the voices that weren't represented on the survey, and for us to get a really true north, if you will, of the feedback and where we need to go, so that everyone's voice in the upper school is incorporated, and then the recommendations that come our way are recommendations that the entire community wants action on. Where I see the board members coming in is maybe once we unpack those recommendations and we have them, I'd love to talk about the how with all of you, because I think, you know, my aspiration as a leader is to be a great leader, to be an excellent leader, and there's a lot to do in the upper school. And I would really love for you to go out and engage faculty members, staff members, leadership, get a sense of the pulse, and then maybe also look at the recommendations with us and give us, just be authentic and transparent. And, you know, you've read the survey results. Again, that's 50%, so we'll have more of a gauge of some real recommendations from the entire faculty. But would love your sense of how do we bring these recommendations to life? What are some, to Daryl's point, like how can we make some movement in the next 6 months in the short term? And what are some long-term goals? And how do we actually do that with what you're reading in the survey results with a community that is feeling disconnected?
Yeah. What are you doing with the middle school to unpack the data?
So far, I've had 2 meetings with leadership, mini meetings with Ms. Carr as a co-leader, and I've been meeting with individual grade level teams. I did kind of a broad stroke in a professional development meeting, just a couple minutes, that Ms. Shelburne gave me, and made a decision to meet with smaller teams so I could really hear from teachers one-on-one. And so that's what I've scheduled for each individual grade level. So far, I'm not finished with all 4, but so far it's going really well. I'm getting a lot of feedback, a lot of interpretation from those groups, and what I'm finding are recommendations coming from the smaller teams for what they'd like to see from the survey committee in general. Also, some people bubbling up to want to be participants. And a lot of celebration around where we are in middle school right now, and also a lot of curiosity and concerns of where our upper school counterparts are. So I'm tracking all of that, keeping notes. Our executive assistant is supporting me in doing so. And in terms of relationship with the board, I'd love for some form of a focus group to happen. I think that's great. It has proven to be great when we have our board engagement days and those types of meetings happen. I get a lot of feedback out of that. And also in both ways we get feedback, and we've also made had some responsiveness, some changes that have come out of that. And so it'd be great to have some type of cadence for focus groups that can be, you know, expected, standardized, not just a one-off, but to be built into how we do business. I welcome that.
So, I mean, this is my role of saying this, not necessarily my opinion, but, you know, one of the things we always have to be careful of is just trying to make sure that there's adequate separation between governance and management, and that we're not skipping. It's okay to do skip reporting on some kind of cadence, but we don't want there to be the expectation that staff just has a direct interface with the board, and they never really talk to the supervisors or leaders to try to reconcile this. So I would say that the way to do what you're suggesting is maybe this year is a good opportunity to do some kind of focus group and deep dive and have direct contact, and then it should happen every 2 or 3 years, or it should happen in conjunction with annual board visits when you visit.
Engagement day.
And that there's always an opportunity to engage with a board member whenever, if the concern is not addressed. But it should go to you as a school leader first, it should come to me next, then it should go to the board.
Absolutely.
Because partly what's happening too is some of these issues, I'm just finding out some of these issues through this process versus anybody scheduling time to talk to me directly about it.
Right. Yeah, and I think there's a difference between surfacing a concern and having a conversation to share perspectives. And concerns are good to go through channels so that there is time to make adjustment and pivot. And that's different than contacting a board member to just have a discussion and let your general feelings, right? And it's the same thing in the workplace, right? If you have a complaint, you want to go through the channels that appropriate the chain of command, right?
It's actually both.
It's both.
Because you hope that the majority of the conversations will go through the established chain and pattern if there's trust and transparency that allows that to happen. But you also have to have the opportunity for people to go to any of these certain folks, and it could be the office manager, the HR director, the head of the firm, or whatever it is. coach who has to take it to the finish line.
Right.
But as a representative of the organization, you have to be able to know what to do with that, where to put it, so that it can be addressed and carried forward.
Yep. Yep, I think that's really well said.
Well, thank you,
Thank you
for all of
for your
your
work on
feedback.
this.
It was a rich discussion, and you know, part of what I think we committed to the committee was to ensure that this discussion happened at this level, and that you all had those results to look at and be able to engage with leadership and open the door, hopefully, to engage in a larger discussion with our staff to really try to move us forward in a direction that, you know, aside from us, that's good for our kids.
Yes,
So, and I think, you know, that's tied to what we've been talking about this whole discussion. This isn't about us. You know, we get to be happy in the places that we work, but at the end of the day, we can't lose sight of the community we need to build for our kids to be successful. And we play a critical role in that. And so if we can't take this step and really figure out how to move forward, our kids are the ones that are going to, you know, pay for that in the end. So I just want to thank you for your time.
Yes, he's going to hold up the, yes.
You just summarized.
Yes, I know.
That's what that is.
I have things in here sometimes, but we appreciate your time. Christy, anything you would add?
No, very well said. Appreciate the feedback. Thank you.
Again, thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, so I'm conscious of the time. How long is the video?
It's like 2 minutes and 58 seconds, and it's worth every second.
All right, let's go with the video, and then we're going to jump into action items. And I'm going to, as you're queuing it up, I want to thank again Ms. Stillwell and Ms. Cruz Gomez for being patient and pushing this to May.
And flexible.
Yeah.
This is going to be really loud behind you all.
Okay.
All right, good. Blast it up. Wake them up.
Wake them up.
I'm all free. I wake up in chapel. My identity are class with your full medal, and the only words I know how to say are yes, master. You, a man, skin so pale along the skirt, but your soul is so dark that it my back is above the horrible memories, but I can't seem to understand them, almost as if they are mine. I am Denise Brown. I graduated from Lee College in North Carolina and returned to the Bennett Health High School. In 2017, I was the first teacher to ever serve as the school site council president at Richmond. In 2018, I was the first teacher to ever serve as the Berkeley School Board member, and I am Black History. I pursued my education at the University
upcoming attractions is right. Okay.
We have the full day.
All right, can't wait for that in May. All right, let's move through the action items now. I'd like a motion to approve the minutes from the January meeting.
I'll make the motion.
Esther moves. Daryl seconds, okay?
Esther moved.
Esther moved, Daryl seconds. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we have the second interim budget. Mr. Mai, is there anything you want to highlight for us on these?
So on this, a couple of things that we do is because for one of the upper school math teachers on maternity leave, that we have to have outsourcing Laurel Spring. Also, that also we need to pay that also. We have to hire a long-term substitute teacher for cover that class. Also, the thing is for the special education program, because the special ed people West Canyon Coastal Unified School District, the rate increased, so we increased that. Also on the at the central office side, on the central office, we have been hired about 7 staff, so our budget is reduced on that end. Besides that, there's nothing changed much besides the 2.
So those are the shifts in the interims?
Yeah,
okay. All right, any questions about that? All right, do I have a motion to approve the second interim budgets that will be submitted to the county office?
I do.
Barack, motions?
I'll second.
Esther seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. E-rate contracts. All right, we have a couple of pieces here. The first one is Damon, do you want to help me out here? The first one is...
the first item is the Comcast contract. And so it has an annual fiscal impact of $33,036. It's for internet connectivity for the school. And if we receive E-rate funding at 90% discount, the annual impact would be $3,303. So it's a significant savings.
Are we certain we're going to get that?
We're not certain. We have gotten it in the past every year, so
we're hopeful. So our fiscal impact is between $3,304 and $33,037.
That's like a teacher raise.
That's right.
That's exactly. No, but that's what happens with E-rate, right? And they do reimburse. So.
Yeah, they typically have, for the last 8 or 9 years that we've received it. So I anticipate that we'll get it. It would be unusual if we didn't.
Okay. All right, so let's vote on that portion of the contract first, knowing that the highest level would be $33,000 and change, but the probable amount is closer to $3,000. Do we have a motion to approve?
I will make that motion.
Okay, Daryl moves.
I second.
Barack seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the next piece, there's a slight error here in that this is for hardware for the continued build-out of the upper school, and it was to have come out of the FF&E budget from the foundation's construction of the property. However, if we pay for it, we can get money back through this E-rate program of, around $50,000. So it makes more sense for the school to pay for it so that it costs the total, pot, so the total pot of money is so much less.
Okay.
So this would be a change to this year's budget of this 6-figure amount, but it's worth it for the money that we will recoup. Okay? So don't want anybody paying more for things than they have to pay, especially such a significant amount. Any questions about that? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the CWG contract, which would go through E-rate as well?
Your turn, Barack.
I do.
Barack motions.
I'll second.
Okay, and Daryl seconds. All in favor?
Yay.
Okay, next is a contract for an executive search firm to help us look for our chief business officer. Lisa has spent such a long time trying to find somebody. What is it, like 600 resumes you've looked at?
Yes, so good afternoon, board. We launched the position back in September, on September 12th. So we've had 6 months of time to search for a CBO candidate. We've received 672 resumes. We've conducted 13 phone screens, and 4 candidates have been moved to the next level in the process. And so after conducting a very diligent search, we have now come to a place where we're approaching the next fiscal year. And so we would like to execute a contract with Access Talent to support our search to find the dynamic CBO to join our team, hopefully by July 1 of this year.
Yes. Yeah. So this contract is a $50,000 contract, which is what these executive search contracts are. I assume that we have, looked at competitive. Yeah, can you let us know that so we know we've had competitive bids on this?
I've researched 3 companies, and Access Talent provides the best rate for us. And Access is also very familiar with our mission and our vision and our culture. And I feel very confident in their ability to support our search.
Okay, and some of the fees from the other firms would have been much higher than $50,000?
Yes, they actually charge a search fee in addition to an administrative fee.
Okay.
Yeah. So the cost is, we would save about $10,000 executing a contract with Access versus Robert Half or Century Group.
Okay. All right, any questions about this? Okay. So this has been a long, long search. We had already hoped to have somebody, but we suspected it would be long, given experience other districts have had hiring for this position. It's going to be a unique skill set, and so I really think that we need this because we really need this person, especially as we grow and need to think strategically about budgeting and long-term budgeting. So do I have a motion to approve the contract with Access Talent Partners?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, Esther moves.
I'll second.
And Daryl seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we have no consent items this time. In the comments portion, I'll note that we have begun the WASP reaccreditation cycle, and we're having a retreat on Monday on that. I think you're participating virtually. Please note important dates at the bottom of the agenda, and then I will just give a chance for board members to voice any appreciations in the space, or anybody else, leaders. Elton, Kimberly, Angel had to leave, I think. Any other appreciations that want to be voiced? Anybody want to voice anything in the space?
I'd like to share an appreciation. I just want to continue to appreciate this community. I'll be completing my 4th year with Making Waves Academy. And just really appreciate everyone being so supportive and authentic and really supporting us through multiple transitions and changes. As you can see, it's turbulent at times, but I just appreciate that we're always anchoring it in our students and what's best for them, and just feel reassured that I continue to feel reassured that the board members and the community are keeping the students at the center of the work, and that I really appreciate the conversations that we're having around the table and that we have when we're not around the table. So just want to extend my thank you and appreciation to not only the board members and Mr. Nelson and my co-leader, Dr. Roy Jackson, but also to my team and to the community. Just want to say I love working here and I appreciate the community and the support.
Other appreciations?
I would love to just appreciate Ms. Garai. She's been a new addition to her translation services.
With no break today?
With no break, and her ability.
Oh, you took a break? Okay. She was like, you guys managed while she took a break? Yeah, good.
We know and we hear you that it's a really valuable service that we want to continue to provide, and increasingly so. So I want to acknowledge and appreciate that.
I have 2 appreciations.
Gracias.
I appreciate the fact that you challenged us to read the book, because I think it gives us a common language and frame of reference for a lot of the work that we're doing. And I would also like to thank the parents who came today. to learn more about what's going on with our school and our community. So thank you for your time.
I'd like to appreciate Elton because he is leading us through a lot of things right now with a steady and calm approach. And is always mindful of what the key priorities are. And he just does not get lost in the weeds of things. And that's really important for what we're doing and for our children and our students. So.
Yeah, I should, appreciate Steve Roth. I guess before he retires, I think his updates are great. Anytime, I guess I'm a civil engineer, so I kind of
you like his updates, yeah.
I kind of love looking at the tilt-up walls are going up, great, and things like that. I mean, I think he, of course, and rest of all of the other team, I think did an amazing job in terms of getting the project done, on time and with all the transitions and different moving parts. Because I know how hard the construction projects are, how challenging it could be to deal with the contractors and getting the things done, especially in the first time, getting that punch list completed. I think that's quite a good work.
Okay, we're going to have to tell him to cut to minute what on this video so that Steve Roth can watch that appreciation.
3 minutes, 3 hours, 20 minutes.
3 hours and 20 minutes. Okay, great. Thank you. All right. All right, anything else? All right, that's it. Thank you. We will start our next meeting a little bit earlier. We're going to add the 10:45. Okay, we're going to start that in May, not just next year. All right, thanks everybody. Thank you. See you next time.